2023 Select Board meeting. Winchester Select Board meeting. My name is Rich Mucci. I'm the chair of the Winchester Select Board. With me this evening is Vice Chair Anthea Brady, members John Fallon, Michelle Pryor, and Michael Betancourt, and Town Manager Beth Rudolph. We have a jam-packed agenda tonight. I did want to start off this evening. It's been a turbulent week for many in the world. I did want to recognize that, and state the obvious, that on Saturday, October 7th, 2023, while innocent people were celebrating a holiday, attending a festival, going about their daily lives, Hamas terrorists spontaneously attacked the people of Israel. They did this with no regard for the lives impacted and lost. Today, that number of deceased increased, and it has really destabilized the region. It has caused a lot of anxiety for the world, but also here at home in Winchester. There are members of our community that are scared, that are grieving, and I think it's important for us to point out this to our members of our community, that to check on your neighbors, check on each other, spend some time listening, as there are many members of our community that just don't know what to do right now. And Michelle and I attended a vigil Saturday night, and it was certainly telling and informative. And I think if we could all just take care of each other, it would go a long way during this time of unrest. And keep praying and hoping for peace, that all affected, and that there's a resolution. So with that, that's all I wanted to say about that. But certainly, if anybody else had something to add, we can open it up to the regular agenda. All right, we will start as we always do with the acceptance of donations.
Move that we accept with gratitude donations in the amount of $307 from individuals and families of the Winchester Recreation Department to the Neighbors Helping Neighbors Fund.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move that we accept with gratitude a donation of $5,000 from the Winchester Hospital Community Benefits Community Relations Program to the Health Department Board of Health for prevention programming.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Beth, your town manager's report.
Sure. So I have updates on just a few items this evening. Several are a repeat from the last meeting, but I just wanted to remind people first that our health department is offering flu clinics on October 19th, 23rd, and November 8th for the seasonal flu vaccine for folks 6 months and older, and then also flu mist is available for folks aged 2 to 49 years. All of the clinics will be held at the Jenks Senior Center, and you can register online on the town's website. Also in the health department, as the board may recall, a few weeks ago, we authorized the health department to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with several other surrounding communities to bolster our hazardous waste collection program. So this Saturday was the first event. So now we are part of a collaborative where many communities come together. The events are held at the Minuteman Household Hazardous Waste Product Collection Facility in Lexington. And so those events will be held monthly. So we're actually at the tail end of the 23 calendar year events. There'll be another event on Saturday, November 4th, and then we'll start back up again in April of 2024. So residents can bring their hazardous waste once a month to those events, and you can sign up online on the town's website. As I mentioned at the last meeting, we have our consultant tool design starting off in earnest the design effort for the Lynch School traffic improvements. And so we'll have 2 public information meetings, one on Tuesday, October 24th from 6 to 7 p.m. For the folks on the Middlesex Street side of the project, and then another one that same evening from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. for the folks on the Pond Street side. Both of these meetings will be virtual. Anybody's welcome to join. You don't have to be a neighbor. We did notify all the folks in the neighborhood, however. Just a few construction updates. So if you're like me and you live near the transfer station, you walked out of your house this morning, you smelled fresh pavement. So final paving did happen at the transfer station today. Didn't get all of it done because of the rain, but they'll be back later this week to finish up. Lake Street Bridge project is moving forward, and we still are on target for a mid-November opening date. We did bid some additional improvements in the Woodside Winter Pond corridor. That bid opening was October 5th, and happy to say that it did come in under budget, so we can award that contract. And we'll be working to put a schedule together. I'm not sure if that work will be done this fall or into the spring. And then also, we're moving forward with the improvements at the Cross Street Bridge. That work will begin after November 15th due to some in-water restrictions. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Any questions for Beth on her report? All right, thank you, Beth. At this point, we'll move to public comment. The way we'll run public comment is please raise your hand. I'll recognize you, come up, have a seat at the table, and you'll have up to 3 minutes to deliver your public comment. So is anyone here for public comment? All right, seeing no one, we will move on. Our first business agenda item is 20 Glenwood Avenue. So this is something that's been on the board's agenda for a few meetings at this point. The last public session we had voted to award the RFP to the owners of 18 Glenwood. And then after that fact, we were made aware that the Affordable Housing Trust had had some conversations and presented some votes. And I think today we received a request from the Affordable Housing Trust. We've have legal counsel here, Liz Leiden from Mead Tallerman, here to assist us in this conversation. We've received some guidance from town council, and certainly she's here to weigh in and participate in the discussion. But at this point, it would appear that we have a decision to make. We had a draft P&S drafted, so we, either need to go forward with that P&S or some type of alternative at this time. There's a lot of information. I think I shared some of that today to make sure that everyone had the historic documents in place. So with that, I can open it up to discussion from the board. I don't know, Liz, did you want to add anything at this point in time, or?
No, I'm just here to answer any questions.
Okay. So I'll open it up for discussion. Where are people at with this?
So a question for Liz. If we don't necessarily have to execute this P&S? That's actually a question, right? That's not a statement. It sounds like a half statement, half question. Do we have to?
So the contract isn't final until it's final. So until you sign, you've voted to award it. However, it is not an executed agreement at this stage. You are required with land purchases, sale of land, to have a contract in writing. However, there are, liability issues that could arise if you award a contract and then don't go forward with the P&S. So,
What kind of liability issues?
well, that would depend on if there was any upfront costs spent preparing the bid documents and negotiating the agreement, any claims of bad faith, things like that, if you do not move forward.
But under the RFP process, these are, I don't know the answer to these questions, that's why I ask them. I'm not asking them to be a smarty pants. But the way the RFP was drafted, would we be, in your opinion, would we be acting in bad faith if we did not move forward with this purchase and sale agreement?
So with any RFP, if you are stating the conditions up front, you receive an offer, you vote to go forward with the offer, and then you don't, you have to have a valid reason why you're doing that, and you have to actually publicly notice that reason. Where it's a little bit tricky where you've already awarded or you've given a letter saying that you accept the bid that was put in front of you, and you've negotiated the terms, reached the final stages of an agreement, and if you back out now, you know, it's all subjective, and there's case law that goes both ways about what claims could arise, versus what the municipality is entitled to do. So even without an executed agreement, you have the issues that I just brought up. Although there's, I mean, if there's money exchanged already, that is evidence of acceptance, in which case there's reliance in a contract. If no money has been exchanged, then there's, you know, the anticipation of a contract, which the costs leading up to that are costs incurred by that person. So it really depends. I mean, it's a case-by-case basis, but it depends on what the reasoning is, and what costs have been incurred thus far, and what statements have been made, and what's in writing. So,
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Best I can tell, we've received one deposit. That's the only bit of money that's changed hands, which was a condition of anyone bidding on the RFP.
mhm.
And that was $10.
$10.
Okay.
$10.
Okay.
No,
That's the deposit, yeah, is $10.
that's the deposit in the PNS, but that hasn't been received yet.
It has not been, so no money has changed hands. We have not even received that deposit.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it's in the PNS,
Yeah,
as in has been paid.
yeah, I guess
That's how the PNS reads.
Yeah.
Is
But it
it?
hasn't been paid.
No.
There was no funding, the
We don't-
RFP did not require a deposit when it was
Right.
submitted.
But, my point is, post RFP, there's been no consideration received.
The town has not received any money
Okay.
from
Okay.
the owner of 18 Glenwood.
And the RFP, I believe, stated that any costs of RFP response preparation was on the bidder, as most RFPs do. So I think that was one of the considerations of liability, you know, costs for having responded was also upfront, not gonna be borne by the town. So we haven't received the whopping $10 deposit. Okay.
Liz, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Now, go ahead, because I'm gonna come back with a question, I think, but go ahead, please.
Okay, on page 13 of the RFP, under the proposal submission terms and requirements, it says, selection of a proposer's proposal will not create any rights on the proposer's part, including without limitation rights of enforcement, equity, or reimbursement until a land disposition agreement and all related documents are approved by the town and fully executed. So, you know, to John's question, whether you think that, you know, says that, you know, there's not a transaction or liability until things are done, I think at least provides notice that things are not complete, right, until they are, right? So we're, without signing a PNS or moving forward, I mean, even if a PNS is not final, right?
Right, until it's executed.
Yeah, or until, right, I mean, until the closing though.
Right, well, I mean, at the stage where you have a written contract and it's been signed, then you have reliance, and
Right.
there's offer acceptance consideration, even if it is $10, and now there's a contract, and now you're gonna have probably a lawsuit on your hands if you don't go forward after that stage, but in my opinion,
But not at the point we're at now.
no, because there isn't,
That's fine.
I mean,
Yeah.
that is I mean, to be clear, there have been cases, there have been lawsuits where they've reached this point, and not signed the agreement, and then people sue. So, I mean, that is a possibility, I shouldn't say no.
Who prevails? Most of the time. And that's really the question, because anybody can sue for anything. They're not happy with what we decide. Okay.
So it depends on the lawsuit.
Oh, behave. Huh?
Well, you know, I can't say, you know, the municipality or the public entity wins every time, because
Right.
that is,
That's not true.
I can't say that.
Yes, I get that.
So it really depends, it's fact specific, and it depends on how far in the agreement, what are the reasons for backing out? Is there bad faith? you know, do you have a valid reason for backing out? In one case, I think it was the MBTA, they backed out of the agreement because, oh, no, it wasn't. It was a town. But anyway, they backed out because there was a court order that said they could not move forward with the RFP. They couldn't award another contract because they were still tied up in litigation over the one that they had not awarded.
Right.
And so in that case, there was no bad faith, there was no question of bad faith because they couldn't do it.
Yep.
So it really depends on it's fact specific.
Okay, thank you.
So Liz, if there was litigation, it would be a question of fact, right?
Right,
I mean, this isn't something that would be borne out on a motion to dismiss or a summary judgment.
right. You would have to actually
Have a trial.
litigate and have a trial and
In what, in Superior Court, Land Court, where would this likely be filed?
That's a good question. Well, it could be land court or superior court, I guess, because it's a property dispute.
So we would be exposed for, if there was an issue, if someone decided to challenge us, like any of our projects, you know, we could be facing years of
You could,
litigation
you could.
and costs to the town.
It depends on the appetite of, you know, the person who's bringing suit, so yes.
I know we're trying to have a, you know, delicate balance here with,
Yeah.
you know, so I appreciate, you know, your remarks. You know, my, concern is, I mean, we voted without seeing the, exhibit that was the main exhibit of the proposal from the proponent, right? Exhibit A that laid out the explanation that justified, the purchase price, you know, where, it's a tenth of what our appraisal is, you know, and so, you know, it's, so I think as far as, you know, our good faith, you know, effort of kind of pulling this back and say, you know, hey, we had two objectives here. Really, one objective was affordable housing, either use the proceeds from the sale for the Affordable Housing Trust or, you know, build something there that's affordable housing, so, I can't imagine that at the point that we're at now, that there would be these years of litigation, you know, in front of us. I mean, I think we've been acting in good faith here.
I will say there is a question about the appraisal because when we looked at it, when Jay and I looked at it, we noticed that it says that there's a grandfathered use on the lot. And because it's been abandoned for more than 2 years, it actually doesn't qualify. So the appraisal might be a little higher due to the fact that the lot is non-conforming.
And so I guess, you know, my experience with this, when we look at Swan and Washington, some of our other properties, it's always the highest and best use, right? So there's, that is judged on the value of the property. So even when we looked at the value of Swan and Washington, it was what a 40B project could be there, right?
Mhm.
So we have the same option here of, even though we think of 40Bs as being large, a singular unit could be there to really effectively restore the property that was there in a sense, even if technically somebody wants to say that it's abandoned and all that. So I guess I'd want to hear from the appraiser, because it would be a different outcome than the appraiser that we use has, you know, what we've been looking at over the years, like looking at highest and best value. So we've counted 40B as a prospective construction project there, not just saying, oh, sorry, it's not grandfather, so it's done. So
Mhm.
variance is also an option there as well, you know.
Yeah, Liz, I was gonna ask, what is the option to build on this lot at this point? I mean, the grandfathered use has expired at this point. It can't be considered a non-conforming lot at this time.
Right.
It's 6,500 square feet to build in that area of town,
Right, it's not a pre-existing non-conforming anymore, it's just,
so it's just land.
it's land, yeah.
So is it a variance? Is it a 40B? What are the,
So
what
it
are the
would
ways?
have to be, I mean, if it was a variance, you have, I mean, the variance would be for everything, right? Setbacks, lot size, lot requirements, I mean, all of the lot requirements, presumably.
in your experience, if the ZBA was to issue a variance for something like this, would it be upheld by a court?
If it got appealed,
Yeah.
I mean, what are the constraints of the topography and, I mean, you would have to make the case for it being because of the land and the topography and the natural conditions of the lot, not because of, you know, knowing this going into it, not great. So,
So
take that
you
for
say
what
the
it is.
I mean, I would have thought the opposite, but, you know, so, the property is, I mean, there is a home there, right?
Mhm.
So, and, I'm not sure how we determine whether it's abandoned or not, but, it seems that, it is a buildable, it's a, you know, it's a buildable lot, physically. I mean, if we were able to get a variance for it, right?
So technically, it wouldn't be a buildable lot.
No, I mean, just physically, we could build there, right? It's not like a
Physically,
fall off
yes,
a cliff,
right.
It's not, right? It's a flat
Exactly.
piece of land
Yeah.
where there is and was a house for a
So you
long
don't
time.
have a good case for the,
Right.
right.
So, you know, if we built something similar, and the setbacks were consistent with what they are now and everything, there'd be a pretty good, you know, argument. I mean, we're kind of speaking in the abstract here. I mean, it's really, the 40B probably would be the easiest option for us, and then variance would be number 2. But somebody, even the current applicant could apply for a variance there if we were to give them the property, right? If we were to award it.
So there is I mean, there's always the argument that it's a self-imposed hardship, right? You buy the lot going into it knowing that it's not a buildable lot.
Yeah.
And so you have to make the argument that there's some circumstance that makes this a hardship. And if you're aware of that when you purchase the lot and then you want to go and build on it, knowing that you can't, I mean, what is the hardship there? I think 40B might be the only option for building on that lot.
So,
But variance would be an option. We just, you know, just don't know. It's a steep hill to
It's all
climb.
up to the board. I mean, that's not my decision to make.
Right.
But
right.
yeah, the
It would be
ZBA
reviewed
could
by the
make a
zoning board of
decision.
appeals. So it would end up in the same place that a 40B would, right?
Right.
Kind of, you know, discussing the facts of the
Right.
property. Sorry, Michelle.
yeah, no, I was just gonna say, but all the variance is outside this board's purview,
Right,
right? And we have a letter from neighbors and residents, like, who want to see the, you know, the lot the house demolished and the lot turned into open space. So certainly sensitive to that it's a decaying property. I guess my concern is, I'm inclined, I guess I'll just put it out there, to not award, not pursue the purchase and sale, not go forward with the purchase and sale, reissue an RFP with a higher minimum bid amount that gets closer to some appraisal. We have the buyer's appraisal, which is 1/10 of the town's appraisal, which might be overstated because it's not grandfathered. So now we have potentially a third appraisal that comes in with 300,000 in front of it, not 400,000 in front of it. But I think I'd be in favor of pull back the RFP, reissue, and then if the highest and best, you know, here's the price that goes to the Affordable Housing Trust, or a developer comes in, because the developer didn't respond. We can argue the timing in August, we can argue the summer, but there's been conversations for years about this lot with, you know, John and I spoke last week with Medford Housing. So either developers of affordable housing line up and respond if we reissue this, or we sell it. And if we sell it, I do have a concern with the current purchase and sale, which is, you know, the buyer will demolish within 9 months. How is that enforceable? I guess, like, what do we do on, you know, month 8, day 30 with this current language? If it's not demolished, what is our recourse as a town? Like, if we were to play out this PNS as it is,
So,
trying to satisfy the neighbors' concerns that please demolish the structure, which is, you know, a hazard and an eyesore, how do we enforce that once we've conveyed the property?
well, it's litigation. I mean,
Well, it would
you can get an injunction
So
from
we're
the
in court
court.
one way or the other.
It would be damages, right?
I mean,
for-
you you can sue for breach of contract for damages, you can get an injunction, you can ask for specific
I was
performance.
gonna say, how about just have them post a performance bond?
Well, the other thing is, you know, I agree with Michelle. I think that we should obviously pump the brakes on the PNS, but I mean, I would say that, you know, Affordable Housing Trust is the beneficiary of the sale of the property, right? They've approved funds for the demolition. Is there a way that we can move forward with the demolition and issue the RFP, you know, on the same track, right? I think that we'll get a higher value back from either somebody that wants to build an affordable housing unit there, or that wants to, you know, give us value for it, right? I mean,
So would that just eat at our net profits? And then we have the liability and the
Yeah.
exposure of what, you know, we get in there. I mean, this is clearly an old structure, right? And looks like it's cement cinder block.
but if the trust wants to put the money forward, I mean, and we certainly have a lot of money to make this a, you know, a better parcel to put out for an RFP. We've got, you know, plenty of money to cover this in the Affordable Housing Trust, the Select Board Housing Fund, ARPA. I think when we hit the reset button on this, I think we'll get that money back, so.
So maybe Liz, can you opine on, can the Affordable Trust use their funds to, and I think the motion was to gift in kind the demolition, which is estimated to be, I think, $30,000 or so, to the town?
Not unless, so if the property were transferred to the Affordable Housing Trust, they could do that. But right now, because they're not buying an affordable housing restriction, there's no proposal to build affordable housing, it's not under current restriction, that wouldn't fall within the purpose of the trust. So they could not do that at this point unless the property were transferred to the trust, or there was a proposal in place.
And to get an affordable housing restriction would need to go to town meeting, right?
Right.
So, you know, but there's gotta be another way around this, right? Like, I mean, that's what I was saying, we've got money sitting in the Select Board Housing Fund, right? We've got, it's all the same, right? I mean, and what my concern is what happens with the, especially the Select Board's Housing Fund. We didn't put all the money from the Select Board's Housing Fund into the trust for exactly this reason, that, you know, we were advised, when we were creating the Affordable Housing Trust, that there would be situations where they'd be a little sticky, and we would need to kind of put money towards something, and this seems like the perfect situation, right? Where if we moved money from the Select Board Housing Fund to do this, then the trust, we can figure out wherever we switch the land in whatever direction the money is coming in, to make it even. But both the Select Board Housing Fund and the Affordable Housing Trust, they have exactly the same mission, you know, so it seems like the funds can serve this purpose and really help us develop a better RFP. I mean, one of the concerns I've heard from people is that they had trouble responding to it. Multiple neighbors in the neighborhood that had, you know, gone out of their way to develop plans and do things, they couldn't quite absorb it. So, you know, I think it's fair to issue a new RFP, but I'm sensitive, you know, as Michelle raised the issue with the neighbors wanting this gone. So that would be my only suggestion. If we could use Select Board Housing Fund, demolish, put out an RFP, clear the lot, that can be done very quickly.
So Mike, I guess I'm the opposite. I mean, I think this sounds like a money pit to me, and, you know, I get the motive here, and I can certainly appreciate it, that, you know, we're in a crunch to build affordable housing, but we have limited resources in this town. This is a property that the town acquired from a tax taking in 2018. Since it's been the subject of 2 town meeting votes, the first one did not yield an affordable housing unit on the property. The second vote in 2021, allowed the Select Board to lease or sell the property and deposit that money into the Affordable Housing Trust. Since that time, and you and I have both been part of these meetings, we have met with several potential, we've had several meetings with potential people trying to convince them to, you know, if we were to put an RFP out, to develop it. Habitat for Humanity, Medford Housing. You have done a great job over, you know, the years to try to advocate for this little piece of parcel to become an affordable housing unit. It hasn't yielded results. I think this summer, and the Affordable Housing Trust has been involved in these conversations since their inception in 2021, as well as the Housing Partnership Board. I mean, I see John Sabir, Marty Jones, they've been involved in these conversations. the RFP, in my opinion, was put out as a matter of last resort. We had no takers. We put it out to see what we could get. We got an offer. And we voted to accept the award. My concern here is all of these, and then all of a sudden, the Affordable Housing Trust came forward and said, you know, we want to be involved in this property. I mean, my first concern is, where have you been for the years that we've tried to, you know, develop this into affordable housing unit? My second concern is that some of the stakeholders that we've talked about have indicated in writing that they're not interested in the property because it doesn't have parking, it can't be 2 units. So I don't know where, you know, it carries an uncertain future. Even the motion that the Affordable Housing Trust adopted a couple of meetings ago, where they, you know, expressed interest in this, you know, really indicated a due diligence period about zoning, about being able to build. So, you know, my concern here is that, you know, this is going to sit, well, I have a bunch of concerns. My first concern is that we've, you know, issued a notice of award. You know, if the neighbor, you know, if we back out of that, we have consequences, several different types of consequences that could hold up, you know, any efforts in this property, could be costly to the town. The second concern I have is we don't, you know, we're talking about spending money to demolish, maybe a new appraisal. These things are going to start to add up, and, you know, we're going to net out, you know, less money than we're putting into it. And my third concern is that, you know, we have this appraisal, and I think it's a red herring. I mean, I read the appraisal. The whole appraisal is based on the assumption that this is a pre-existing non-conforming lot. You know, without that, you can actually build something there. That is not the case. This is, you know, essentially vacant land. And, you know, I've done variance litigation. I don't see how, you know, even if the ZBA was to award a variance, I don't see how it's upheld by a court. And we have a bunch of neighbors that have sent a letter to this town, to all of us this week, expressing their concern about having a development. I've gone down there twice in the last 2 weeks. I've walked around. It's a narrow street. I can understand their concern, but I also understand our goal to achieve affordable housing and to build affordable housing units. My concern is that even if we were to tear down this property, get a new appraisal, put it out to an RFP, maybe somebody bids, but they're going to want a subsidy from the town. Now we're spending, you know, tens, hundreds of $1,000s on a small piece of property where we have other projects that we all are aware of, where we could put those resources to develop maybe a duplex, maybe 2 units, maybe an accessible unit. So I certainly can appreciate the goals of the Affordable Housing Trust, and I'm aligned with those goals. I just don't see this piece of land being the land that we you know, argue about this. I think, you know, we let it go. It will help the neighborhood by what they've said here. And that we put those funds, and yes, it's $40,000, but you have to also, I mean, even the Affordable Housing Trust will admit, you know, their estimate's $30,000 plus, you know, possible abatement costs to demo the property, so it's $70,000. You know, to me, that the neighbor's willing to take on, at the very least, to me, this, it makes sense to take what we can get and move on to the next project, and not face the potential of exposure for legal fees, 2 years of litigation, you know, an uncertain future. Even if, you know, if we clear those hurdles, we have to then go through the 40B process where neighbors can object again to build, you know, a 476 square foot you know, piece of dwelling place. I'd much rather see us focus our efforts in other areas. And I certainly appreciate all your efforts in this. I've said this a number of times. You did, you know, a great job in trying to build this. But we did this as a last resort. We had no takers. I just don't know where we're going to go by reissuing this RFP. I just think it's a money pit, and I think it's time to move on. And I know that's not a popular decision for many, but I think at the end of the day, it will yield us better results to focus our efforts on other pieces of property and move on from this piece of property.
I think we've got, you know, the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust and the Housing Partnership Board here, and, you know, they're stakeholders and more than tangential to this project, so it would seem appropriate to hear from them. I don't want to speak, you know, for them. Again, I've been on the Affordable Housing Trust, as is Beth, and I've been on the Housing Partnership Board for, since 2015. We identified this parcel in both the master plan and the housing production plan as a location for us to build affordable housing, right? So, frankly, and I apologize for this, it fell behind other larger projects that we're working on, Swan and Washington, Waterfield. They're in between all of that. Rich, there was a pandemic, right? We had a lot going on. There's only so much that we can do, but I think it was the intention here to kick the tires on getting somewhere close to the appraisal, or if in the alternative, building affordable housing. So with a extremely low, unjustifiable offer, I think that we should listen to the stakeholders, and I think that's good government, right? I mean, we need to listen to the people that we've appointed to these positions, and that have been appointed, that have been doing the work. So that's who I listen to, even where, I have certain feelings and instincts. I have my perspectives from being a lawyer and from being in practice, but I would appreciate if we extended that courtesy to those chairs. Those are my requests.
Can I ask a question? Liz, as Mike pointed out, not seeing that Exhibit A until after we did the intent to award, are we able to negotiate at this point on cost, like in asking for?
So Exhibit A was, and I have it open, I just don't have,
It was how they came to the cost on the lot.
I mean, is that something that,
I think the question you're asking,
The
Anthony,
question is-
can we go back to the potential
To the
party that's been awarded
bidders
the
and negotiate on cost. I know that they offered, as Rich pointed out, they offered a higher sum for the property, dependent on the town being able to demolish the structure. And based on our RFP, we had said, the way we had written the RFP with the sort of intent that that structure has to come down, that we weren't able to award it at the higher cost.
so was the Exhibit A submitted timely, or was it just not received by the board,
It was not received by the board.
before the decision was made,
Yes.
right?
I don't think I've seen that before.
Packet, we would have scanned the proposal that was submitted, so I'm not sure if I'd have to go back to the original packet the board received.
Well, they would have submitted, a USD was required, right? So we went off there. We didn't,
I think
They submitted everything to the town.
yeah.
It was all in order. The question is, did it make it into
Make it
our
to us.
packet? Is that what the question is?
Yeah,
The Exhibit A?
yeah, sorry, that's my question, because I think when we saw it when that was shared with us last week, I don't think I'd seen that before,
none of us had.
so, yeah.
I mean, is there specific information in Exhibit A that would make the determination different? I mean, what is it about the exhibit that,
So my understanding, Liz, is it correct, and I think you were involved in the decision, we had one decision to make. We could accept the $40,000
Right.
offer
right,
or not.
right. And that's why I'm a little confused about the exhibit, because I just don't know what would have changed had the exhibit,
The exhibit identified the rationale for the purchase price, right? And from my perspective, it helped me see that the rationale was flawed, right? So if we accept this amount of a purchase price because of state procurement laws, then we have to issue a statement of why this was so low, right? We have to explain that, right, publicly, right? To put that in the central register, right? So it's a question of how we explain something that is so flawed that we made a decision on, right? So, that's my concern about not receiving Exhibit A, because it really clarified that flaw, I think,
So
from
what
my
are you basing the
perspective.
flaw on? Is it our appraisal from Mark Reensteiner?
No, is a justification of looking at each property and valuing the properties in the neighborhood based only on the excess square footage around the property, right? It's not a way that anybody determines property, especially in a fairly dense area, right? So, this was Exhibit A, right?
But I guess are you saying you said it's deeply flawed, is that because you think it's worth the 400 and whatever thousand that Mark Reensteiner?
Well, I think when we do appraisals, and the state requires an appraisal from us, right, when we put out an RFP, 3B, so we, there are certain standards of appraisals and how you appraise, so they can say, this is the method we used in order to do it, this is the method. When somebody makes up their own method that has no basic in fact or reason, and we rely on that, we have to explain not just to the state and the central registry, but we've got to explain to the residents, why we did that, right? And so I think Michelle's offer is a fair one, to reissue the RFP and extend it. And I think that town meeting wanted us initially to put a floor on this, right? So I think this returns to the question, and, we don't have, we screwed up this a little bit here, I feel like, but we don't have an obligation of perfection, right? But making two bad choices, is not, not what we typically do here. So I think that we can be creative and we can reissue the RFP. And as I said, I think we should hear from the stakeholders. I think the residents should hear from the Affordable Housing Trust and the Housing Partnership Board, because they have subject matter,
I have a
expertise.
question. I'm not really sure what part of the process was flawed. I think the appraisal's flawed, because when I read it, it looked like it wasn't based on a
very flawed.
non-conforming use, which is not gonna be $400,000, because you've gotta factor in so much money for the risk that the developer's taking to get a variance. It's probably gonna get pounded, it's gonna get blown out, and he's gonna have all this she's gonna have all these litigation costs. So I don't think it was flawed. Maybe we should have drafted it differently, but it wasn't flawed. So that's what I'm taking exception to, Michael. I don't think it was flawed.
Yeah, no,
I mean, I have a question too, where all these other stakeholders were during the process.
yeah.
Did the Affordable Housing Trust reviewed the RFP, right? Was there a conversation about it?
The Housing Partnership Board reviewed it.
So I think, regardless of the exhibit, I think the reason to accept a lower bid, which is what we put out in the RFP to begin with, is that the proceeds would go to affordable housing, even if affordable housing can't be built. And so that would be the purpose that we put out as a statement in the Central Register, to say why we accepted a lower bid, because there's a greater public purpose for this money, and that would be affordable housing. So I don't think the exhibit would affect the decision-making.
Yeah, see, I think it would, and I think that's because we had a decision, like the RFP had two objectives, right? I mean, the ultimate objective was affordable housing, but either build affordable housing there, have a developer say, we're gonna build this for you, or get a substantial payment. And so the process was, we're gonna have the planning board and the housing partnership board review that and decide, make a recommendation to the select board, take public input. We didn't do any of that process, right? So that's where I feel like it's flawed, John. So,
Okay, all right.
right, and
Yeah.
so, and I think what we would have yielded from recommendations from those bodies, based on knowing them, is they would have said, this $40,000 is not worth more to us than us building a unit there, right? Because there's no other place in Winchester, greater Boston area, that you can build, for, $40,000. There's essentially nothing we can do with that money, right? And part of my concern is just being here for a while, seeing the Select Board Housing Fund, and all of that money come in and sit there. Some of that money, or the majority of it, had been sitting there for more than 10 years, So, and what happened at that point, way back when, is developers could buy their way out of an affordable unit. So where we should have had affordable units, we had money that couldn't build, right? They couldn't buy a unit, couldn't use that money. So that's my concern. I think, I see pretty clearly that that we can build a unit there. It could fit in with the neighborhood, we can demolish it, we can make this right. It's part of our plan, it always has been, and it doesn't forsake other development projects. You know, that's what the housing production plan is. We're required to build 40 units of affordable housing every year by the state, right? So we can't just hope that a giant 40B is gonna come in and do that, right? Residents want us to be strategic, and I think this would be a good strategic opportunity for us to.
So Mike, I can appreciate that you see that, but we put the RFP out and no one came forward. So to me, I think that answers that question, that no one is interested in this, except now, after the fact, the Affordable Housing Trust wants to try to scrape together a way to build this. And to me, I just don't see it being feasible. And I think it's just gonna be, it's gonna be a lot more hassle and distracting and costly than what we could get for bang for our buck in developing other areas of town, other lots that we have right now. And I wish, you know, and I don't know why, you know, this conversation didn't happen in the 2 or 3 years that we kicked around with different groups, you know, to try to build something there. It just never happened. And the last one of these groups, which is probably the, you know, the one that people think is the most interested, you know, in writing said they weren't interested in it in August because they weren't gonna go further because they wanted a subsidy from the town and they wanted, you know, a place to be able to put 2 cars, in a driveway. So,
Yeah, I mean, I spoke with Susan Collins from Medford Housing Friday at length. They're very interested in the project. I mean, I see a pathway here. I mean, the Affordable Housing Trust can spend their funds in the way that they choose, right? That's why the trust is there. I don't think it's our job to only give them certain options. And I don't see how they would have, why they would have ever bid on this RFP. It would be bidding against themselves, right? Part of it was to see if we could get somebody that would give really a decent number as an offer, then the trust might say, hey, that's worthwhile, right? Maybe taking a few $100,000 from this parcel and putting it to something else gets us something, you know. But they were always going to get the proceeds, or they were going to be part of the development of a parcel. So
but I guess they could have signaled along the way that they were interested in contributing funding to develop this into an affordable housing unit, so that maybe we didn't go to an RFP at that point in time. Maybe we did, you know, something different.
But I think it's part of, it's good government for us to put out an RFP to see what is out there.
So here's my concern now, is this is all after the fact, after we've issued an award. So we could go in all this different direction, but what I'm concerned about is we still face exposure and delay from, you know, potential legal consequences of backing out of this at this point. I mean, to me, it's just not worth the risk. I mean, as I sit here, I have to look at what's in the best interest of the town. And at this point in time where I sit, and I was, you know, very surprised to hear the conversations after the fact, after we issued this award, because none of that was said in the 3 years that I've been on this board, you know, about this piece of property. And, you know, we kind of put ourselves into a position, and I think at this time, the legal consequences are too great to undo it. And I just think it's gonna become a huge money pit in that area, and it's just, the 2,300 square foot lot is just not worth it. I think we can focus our area, you know, and build affordable housing tomorrow in other areas of town if we, you know, weren't distracted by this piece of property.
I mean, I don't see it as a distraction. I think that the Affordable Housing Trust and Housing Partnership Board have been engaged in this along the way. Again, we were focusing on projects, you know, like Swanton and Washington, like Waterfield, that had, you know, and even recently Cross Street, right, that had more bang for our buck, right? We've had 2 large 40Bs that we've been involved in with River Street and Cambridge Street, right? So, you know, we've made enormous progress through the efforts of the Housing Partnership Board and the Affordable Housing Trust with affordable housing here. And so they've been standing at our side for since I've been on this board, right, and since the Affordable Housing Trust was created. So I don't think that, I think there's zero exposure for us here, Rich. I think it's a little bit of a scare tactic, to be honest with you. Clearly, the RFP provides notice that nothing is final when a notice of award is issued. I feel like that is dispositive. I don't know why we don't want to hear from the chairs of the Housing Partnership Board and the Affordable Housing Trust. It seems.
It's not that we don't want to hear, we've heard from them, they've responded in writing, on several occasions.
But the residents haven't, nobody's heard from them, they sent us an email, it hasn't, we can't just hope that everybody's in town is checking our email every day.
No, but you said for us to hear from them, and we've heard from them. We know exactly what their position is at this point in time.
I don't think you do. I mean, they haven't spoken, they haven't sat here and explained it to the board and to the community, right?
They have explained their positions to the board. So, I mean, I'm just trying to further the dialogue. Look, you guys want to go and do this, that's fine. I personally think we do it at our peril. That's where I sit at this point in time. It was, I appreciate what people are trying to do here, but it came in too late. And I still to this day do not understand, one, why it took so long for this to come in. You said they've been there every step of the way, number one. Two, how we're hanging our hat on an appraisal that is so flawed. This land has zero value at this point in time. And we're getting a house destroyed and, an offer of cash to the Affordable Housing Trust. Is it, it's not it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars this property's worth. It's just not.
But the value of the affordable housing is to our community, Rich, and this is the only single option that we have. We can build a single-family home in this location, and I think that saying...
That's not true, because we've approached the Affordable Housing Trust on 164th Street and other pieces of property that we potentially could build on, and what we've heard back is, we'll take the deed, but we're not interested in developing it. So I think it's disingenuous to say that this is
It's
the
not
only
true.
single-family house.
What are you talking about, Rich? That is not true.
It is true.
Rich, I think the opposite of what you're saying is fact, but I don't want to get into 164th and other issues.
So this isn't the only place where we can develop single-family houses. In fact, we have a couple of areas where we could develop if we moved on, so.
Duplexes, I mean, I think that we, again, I would appreciate if we would hear from the trust and from the Housing Partnership Board. I know you're not gonna like what they have to say, but I mean, this is why we have stakeholders. This is why we have residents in these positions. It's so we can listen to them and hear what they have to say and then make decisions. I get that it's a tough decision for you and it's not for me, but I think knowing these projects and where they've been over the years, I have 100% faith that we can build something there that will benefit a family, and I think that's our obligation. Besides the fact that we're starting a CPA process right now, and Dee and I have been working on this, and we're asking residents to invest in affordable housing, right? And we're saying we need more money to do projects, and if we're just taking something that is of such de minimis value for us, I think there's gonna be a question of trust. This was a pretty, high-profile discussion at town meeting. Town meeting is not gonna be happy with the fact that they trusted us by not putting a floor on it, and now we're just issuing it because we can't be bothered,
That's not true. We spent years, I've probably attended 20 to 25 select board meetings where we've talked about Glenwood dating back to my first day on this job. And we have met with Habitat, we have met with Medford Housing, we have met with other stakeholders. We have tried for years, and we did this as a last resort, and we issued it, and that's my problem. We've issued an award.
So is the
If you guys
question,
wanna
Rich,
undo it-
is the question here that, is this because I'll make a motion to move to a P&S. This is a motion to move to a P&S with the successful bidders, and they have to, we put some provision in there, they have to take the structure down within 3 months, and they have to post a performance bond of $40,000.
So right now, the PNS is drafted with 9 months.
Okay.
Until performance starts. And the reason for 9 months, and Liz, I don't know if you were involved in these negotiations, is the concern is that if they get the award now,
Yes.
when we close, they have to winter.
Right.
So they need time to mobilize and tear it down. That's why they were looking for the 9 months.
Okay, so all right, I'll leave the 9 months, but I want a performance bond.
Can we, I'll defer to town
Or,
council.
or an escrow of $40,000, or some kind of I don't wanna have to sue them and end up in court, we just wanna be able to get the money and do it ourselves. I don't wanna do it, period, but we need to have some kind of leverage.
Can we do something like that, Liz?
I think, I mean, that's a term that, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the PNS isn't signed yet. I think
Absolutely.
if you want some kind of assurance that it's going to be demolished, I think that's.
It's
you know,
reasonable.
It hasn't been executed, and that's a reasonable concern that might move it forward
So
if
I
it's
understand
addressed.
your motion, it is to move to a PNS,
Yes.
and they have to amend the PNS as drafted to tear down the structure within 9 months of closing and post a performance bond of $40,000.
Yes, correct.
Is there a second?
Had to start someplace, come on.
My question on that, so the exhibit, which was not received until after in looking at that, are we able to say, you know, at this point, that information changes our assumption, and we would want to ask the bidders for more money based on how they evaluated the cost of the land?
Even seeing the basis for their proposal, I think that the proposal was what it was, and I don't know that that information would actually justify reopening, negotiating the price when we accepted the price without that. It's just further justification of why they proposed it. So I'm not sure that that would actually rise to the level. I mean, it's totally, if that's what you want to do, you can do it, but when it comes to backing out, I don't know if that's a justification for doing so. If that makes sense.
So getting back to John's motion, is there a second? All right,
Very sad.
hearing that there is not a second, can't really second a motion. What do you want to do? Where do we go from here?
So I move that we work to reissue the RFP. We work with our stakeholders to get approval for an RFP, and we engage conversation with the Housing Trust to demolish the property as soon as possible. I mean, I can recommend that we use select board housing funds in order to move forward with the demolition. I would like to do that. I think we owe that to the neighborhood. But whether we spend the money from the housing fund or from the housing trust, I don't think it matters. So, I know that's a very long motion, but
So your motion would also, I think, need to include rescinding the award of the RFP, right?
okay, yeah. Well, not executing the purchase and sale, I don't think is all we,
You might want to separate them too, because using funding for demolition is a separate issue from the issue in front of us. which is
no,
the-
no, I know, my,
So I guess, would the first vote be to rescind the award of the RFP?
Yes.
okay, so I move that we rescind the original award of the RFP based on our new information that came to the board and our interest in getting a higher purchase price or a better outcome for the community.
Is there a second?
I'll second that,
Roll call vote, Michelle,
yes.
John,
No,
Anthea?
I can't vote on that without us having a conversation about what a floor would be on an RFP going forward, because if we're putting 30,000 to demolish it, then we need to have a discussion about if there's a new RFP, what the base is there.
Well, I think we would decide that. You know, I don't need to be part of that process. Anybody can. I mean, I think that we can take a recommendation from staff, or we can, I don't know. I mean, we can, I can't say off the cuff what you know, what a floor would be for it, but,
It sounds like we'd be going back to square one and redrafting, and
I think we're just making a few changes and putting a floor. I think that's all we're doing. And part of that is, if we don't get that floor, then we go back to the process that we intended, where we're working with stakeholders.
So what are you basing the floor on? The flawed appraisal we have? Like, what
I'm
do you-
not basing it on anything, and Thea wanted, I think it's a fair question, you know, like, we're not gonna put a floor at $500,000 on this property, so, like,
So what are we gonna put the floor at?
I don't know.
So is
Well,
it,
how do we determine that, I guess?
Right, yeah, I mean,
so is it
So we're gonna
reasonable
spend the
that we say,
resources to determine that floor.
I think we work with staff, and we have a recommendation, and we, move forward with a new it's part of reissuing the RFP.
So we would need a new appraisal, right?
Well-
You're shaking your head, right?
That would be my recommendation, yeah.
Yeah, so the appraisal, when we do appraisals, right, when we do them for our practice, they're an update. It's not like reissuing a whole appraisal, right? It's just saying, look at the present market conditions, update it, here is our objective. There's been, you know, this other information where it's fallen out of the grandfathering, give it to us. Is it, you said 400,000, if it's 100,000, then that's where we're at, you know? So, and we'll see what the interest is. We may have interest also from other nonprofit developers, so. So would you be comfortable, Anthea, with working on the appraisal, or requesting an update of the appraisal to determine that floor?
We would need to request an estimate to update the appraisal and then vote those. Right? Am I wrong?
We would need a funding source.
We need a
for
funding
the-
source to
for
update the appraisal.
yeah.
Okay, well, I recommend the Select Board Housing Fund to update the appraisal to amount no more than $2,500.
Wait a second, we still have
You
the
have a- you
motion
have a-
out there
yeah.
for to
Rescind
rescind
the
the
rescind the RFP.
Yeah, the RFP, so we have to more than that.
It's, John, it's a fluid motion, we just add to it. I mean,
No, I'm with
Um,
John, we should, that's one decision.
we're at the discussion point here, so I mean, Anthea asked a question, we're in
yeah,
the
my-
discussion, so.
I'm not comfortable voting on that without kind of, I know that's not necessarily in an order of voting, but without having that conversation first, because I think what we've discussed is multiple years and meetings of not having something conclusive and putting out an RFP and, you know, not having a floor in that RFP, so what we've accepted now is, it's like feeling like a little bit of buyer's remorse in a way of, oh, we've accepted the RFP, now it's too low, now we have to go back, and so I just think that we really do need to understand what, if we're gonna reissue an RFP, what is the bottom there that we will take? Because when we put out the RFP initially, the bottom that we would take is this house needs to come down and somebody needs to take possession of this land, and we didn't have.
So my understanding, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but the strategy behind not putting a floor in was to not to discourage developers from bidding on the project. Right? Wasn't that the whole thing? We felt if we put a floor in for the cost, it would discourage potential development of affordable housing, which, by the way, is getting harder and harder this day and age with, you know, the interest rates. So, I mean, right, wasn't that the thinking behind when we put when we wrote the RFP?
So the thinking was this, Rich, is that there would be a process in place where we would have the planning board and the housing partnership board review this to say, if somebody offered us $25 for this property, we would have a conversation, we'd have a public opportunity for responses and review and make a recommendation. It's exactly what the RFP says. So I think that we put that process there, you know, to protect the risk of what is exactly happening now. An offer that is really so low that it's really taking advantage of the town. So I don't know. So I'm happy to say.
Just for the record, I totally disagree with you that I think somebody's taking advantage of town. I think this offer is more than fair, given what the liability the owner's taking on potentially with that house, and the fact that they're willing to demolish it and create open space in that area. So that's just, I mean, so I just disagree with that. But we have a motion to rescind the RFP. There was a second
So,
Is there any further discussion on that motion?
yeah, there's discussion that Thea had raised the issue about, so I can make it, rescinding the I can amend the motion to include rescinding that we rescind the RFP, rescind the notice of award through the RFP process, engage in the issuance of another RFP subject to a updated appraisal, which will be paid for either by the town manager's budget or the select board housing fund.
Didn't you just say it was supposed to be,
We're supposed to break it out? but
right,
that's
break it
okay.
up?
Well, she didn't say we couldn't do it. I mean,
You get a whole
we're
bunch of
trying-
linkage in there? Mr. Filibuster?
Look, guys, if
killing
we're,
me, bro. It's,
if-
yeah.
if you guys are, if you want to go back and you want to, redo this process, then I think at least you owe it to the neighbor, just to rescind the RFP and go back and then rethink it. So that's,
Rescind the award.
when you rescind the award, excuse me, rescind the award. So, I mean,
So I think that would be one motion,
right,
just to rescind the award. And then there would be a separate motion to use whatever funding for reissuing an RFP, I think. Right.
So I can just do the reverse motions, then, so withdraw my motion. I mean,
We can go all night, I'm not giving up. Go ahead.
Like waltzing, someone's going in one direction and someone's going the other. Sorry, I know we want to move forward and make a decision, but I also, on one hand, I feel like to the neighborhood, it is, who have lived with this for 5 years, what if, so to play out a scenario, we put out an RFP, we drum up some interest, nobody bids on it. And at this point also, the neighbors don't bid on it. And so now this lot is still sitting here and we haven't, and this house, which to my understanding, the door can be opened, but you can't go into it. Then what? So if we rescind the RFP and we put out a new RFP and there's no movement on it,
well,
What do
that's
we
the
do?
risk we take.
what do we,
So
what do we
the,
do, and how do we rectify the fact that then we have left this house sitting on this lot for another year, and now the
we-
neighbors are pissed?
Well,
Right.
that's why, Anthea, I made several motions, I don't know, but I mean, I think that I don't even know.
If you can't follow them, don't blame me
We're
for
gonna
not
have
being
to
able to follow them.
this meeting in post because it's a little bit wild, but so there's money there to demolish the building. I think that should be our number one priority. That is what the neighborhood is asking for, right? So if we clear the building, we clear the lot, we have the resources approved by the Affordable Housing Trust, maybe the motion and maybe the mechanism wasn't the best one. We've got money in the Affordable Housing Trust, in the Select Board Housing Fund. Let's use that money, let's demolish, let's reissue the RFP. We'll work with the, getting an updated appraisal from Mark Reinsterna. And I think that solves all the problems. And if we don't get anybody to bid on the second RFP, the lot is cleared. That is the number one concern of the neighborhood, so.
I mean, if I was a neighbor, why
But
would I?
part
why
of
would
the
I-
RFP was to get money for the Affordable Housing
Correct.
Trust,
So we didn't get any money for the affordable house. We
We
now
spent
have-
$30,000
So if I'm the
on the
neighbor,
lot.
we take on tearing down the house, it's gonna sit there now. And, why would I bid on it? I got what I wanted. The house is gone, I have open space. And we've defeated the purpose, which was to get something for the Affordable Housing Trust. But, I mean, we could sit here all night and talk about hypotheticals. None of us have a crystal ball. If you
We
want
do.
it, if you want, no, we don't.
Sure we do. We have the.
Maybe you do, but I don't.
Yeah, but Rich, I mean, the Affordable Housing Trust has made a commitment and said they are ready, willing, and able, and put money behind it to build something here, so.
Which we're
there's-
told they cannot do because
I-
it's not restricted for affordable housing purposes. That's
Rich,
what, is that your opinion?
Yeah.
Rich, I just explained that an alternative for us is, and this is what happens all the time. I get that maybe technically that mechanism isn't perfect. We have other mechanisms to do it. We can use ARPA, we can use the Select Board Housing Fund. So this is why we're going around in circles. We're trying to engineer an outcome that is not consistent with the facts. We have an opportunity for affordable housing here. This project was not just about getting money for the trust. It was about either building affordable housing or getting money for the trust. So I think if the outcome is building, then the trust is willing to do it.
And I said before, since 2018, you have undertaken that effort, and we haven't been able to do it as we sit here today.
It's not true.
Have we built anything there? No.
Rich, it hasn't been since 2018. We only got authority from town meeting in the beginning of '22.
No, the first motion you got
What
was
was the
to,
second one?
the first motion was to build affordable housing there.
We thought that at that point, we had another project, 160 Forest Street, and we thought that based on the value of the appraisal, that it may be a better value for us to take $500,000, put that into 160 Forest and sell the property. So that's why we did that. It wasn't because we didn't see that affordable housing was possible there. So,
So I don't want to take the
Mike's
risk.
motion's like a hanging chad.
Yeah, I don't-
We don't have the finish yet.
I'm not willing to take the risk. I want the certain outcome at this point in time. I think there's too many variables to go back. But there's a motion out there. There was a second.
So can we just, for Patty, can we be clear what the motion is that we're voting
Yeah.
on?
Oh, boy.
Well,
Is the
so
motion, is your motion?
I think that the town council's recommendation is that we split the motion into two. The
Yes.
first would be to rescind the notice of award, and the second would be related to reissuing of an RFP and a new appraisal. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, so,
So is your motion to rescind the award?
so, with respect to Liz, right, we don't have to do, the motion that way, and Thea has raised an issue here.
But you
which is
made a
reason
motion to
one-
rescind the RFP. That was your first, so, and
Raise, I don't remember.
Michelle seconded it.
Yes.
I said no, and Thea put some conditions on it that led to a half-hour discussion. So we should just either table this till 2025, or make a decision.
I think that we all agree that more time isn't necessarily beneficial to, this process. I think that we have enough levers to pull to move this forward.
So is your motion to rescind the RFP?
My motion.
I mean, excuse me, is rescind the award of the RFP?
It was.
It was, and so when we.
Do you want to amend that motion?
Yes, I do.
Okay, how would you like to amend it?
To include if we rescind the RFP, include an updated appraisal of the property with the intent of reissuing an RFP.
And do you want to identify a funding source in your motion?
Is anybody opposed to any particular funding source? Select Board Housing Fund, is that cool?
Fine.
Okay, so that's your motion. Is there a second?
I'll still second that,
Okay, so roll call vote. Michelle?
yes.
John?
No.
And Thea?
I have a hard time rescinding, I mean, I have a hard time voting to rescind the RFP with us then coming into a situation where we're going to not have money going to affordable housing if we can't build anything. So that's my major concern, is that we would then clear the lot, which is great, but we wouldn't end up going forward with it at that point. And so that's my concern, is that we're then taking $30,000 away from the Select Board Housing Fund, and we're not, we're at a loss.
So,
So that's a no.
I
think that's a no.
So in the,
I mean, this is the money pit I'm talking about. I mean,
So-
it's not a money pit. This money is there for affordable housing, right? That's what we're using it for.
But if
no, we're not.
if
We're not
using
using, let's
it-
get that
so-
straight right
so
now.
just-
We're using it for the prospects of maybe we might be able to build affordable housing there.
No, you're wrong.
So
No, I'm right. We put an
You're wrong.
RFP up. No one wanted to build affordable housing.
you
You're
just
dead wrong.
said, so just to be clear, you just said, we clear the lot, and if no one bids on it, then we have a clear lot, which is what the neighborhood is looking for.
No.
So,
Then we build. No. But my point is, my point is, Anthea, then we build. The Affordable Housing Trust said, we will build there no matter what. We will put the money into building.
the Affordable Housing Trust said, we will build subject to doing due diligence on the property. So I'm just worried that we're taking on a risk, and we're going to, instead of putting what is right now a small amount, but the only amount to the Affordable Housing Trust, is that we will take money away from the Select Board Housing Fund and also get no affordable housing. So that's a risk that I don't know if that's a risk that I am willing to vote in favor of. Because if someone's giving me that it's 90-10, sure. But it doesn't feel that way right now, given the knowledge of numbers of conversations that have had. It feels like that is a risk, that we're taking money away from the Select Board Housing Fund and we're not putting any money to the Affordable Housing Trust on this property, and we have gone in the opposite direction of the intent of this, even though what's resulting is a fairly small dollar value and not affordable housing. So that's where I'm at, and I'm just stating that that's where I'm
Can I
at.
ask a question? Is it possible for us to engage the PNS and ask as a condition of the PNS, to ask the owner to make a donation to the Affordable Housing Trust?
Really putting me on the spot tonight.
As a condition of the RFP?
Well, no.
No, excuse me, condition,
No.
excuse me, is it a
Okay.
condition of the PNS?
So, no, because, no.
That's good enough, you can just leave it at that.
Because under 30B, you have the conditions that you want, and the conditions are stated in the RFP.
For the
And so,
PNS.
my mind is clouded.
Why?
I don't know, but I'm trying to sift through to figure out. So, under 30B, you have the conditions of award already in essentially in the RFP. And so you can't then add conditions after it's been awarded that weren't anticipated when they responded. Okay, I think I said that correctly.
Someone would need to raise that objection though, right?
They can just watch the tape.
Exactly.
So you want more risk, than, right?
No, I'm saying that if the owner, if we put that condition in the PNS, say, give us an extra $50,000, $100,000.
That
to
you
the affordable
cannot
housing.
do, there's just.
Can we just take the vote?
Please don't.
I mean, let's take the vote.
I tried to, but we stopped.
I think that there's.
I'm sorry, I explained, I didn't vote, I'm voting no. I explained my reasoning behind it. I just want to be clear on why.
Yeah, of course, I'm, a yes, for it. I mean, I think we're bending over backwards to try to accommodate a position that is anti-affordable housing. It is extremely cynical for us. And saying that there is all this discomfort with, we want to make sure the Affordable Housing Trust gets enough money. They have told us, and if we were allowed to listen to them, they would tell us they don't want this money. They want this money to be used for this purpose. And saying that they can't do something is a really bad message to be sending to a stakeholder group that we created with town meeting for exactly this purpose. And as I said before, we kept the money in the Select Board Housing Fund for this. Anthea, I don't know why you're smiling. I mean,
Because you're looking directly at me and
it's-
restating what I said, which
it's-
is not that we are anti-affordable housing.
It is.
It is,
You can't vote against affordable housing and at the same time.
Now you're getting ridiculous.
so,
I'm not,
so
Rich.
no,
I'm not.
I mean,
You are.
you're taking what I said and turning it around to suit your needs, because
No.
it's not really going the direction any of us had hoped. It would have been great if we had more than one bid, if we had had interest prior to doing the bid, if the bid was higher than what it is, and if we could go back and negotiate it. But so I'm just worried that the risk we are taking swings in the opposite direction, and I don't think someone would come up here and say, we don't want the money. They might say in a different way, and I just, you're restating what I said in not the way I said it, and I don't appreciate that.
Well, I'm trying to.
So we're gonna finish the vote, Mike,
I'm
first.
trying to
So
make-
you're a yes, I'm a no.
Yeah.
So the motion fails. So is there another motion? Is there further discussion on this topic? What do you think we can accomplish tonight? Let me ask that question. It's 9 o'clock right now. We've been going for an hour and 15 minutes at least on this piece. We have several people in the audience, some paid consultants that are here as well, that I'm sure are enjoying this conversation, but we have to get to maybe some other topics. So is there anything we can accomplish tonight? Is there any consensus we can find to this issue tonight?
Can we earmark the taxes to the trust?
I'm sorry?
Can we earmark a portion of the taxes on that land to the trust?
So if we were to award the PNS, sign the PNS, and the homeowner started to pay taxes on that piece of property, can that money be sent to the Affordable Housing Trust, or does it need to go to the general fund? I would imagine the general fund. We have our comptroller in the audience.
We could vote to move it, it could be an internal policy to collect that portion and then vote to move it to the Affordable Housing Trust.
And who would need to be involved in that internal process, Stacy?
The internal process of the policy, it would
Yeah.
just be town management and or select board if you wanted to make it formal.
Doesn't
So it
require a
doesn't-
town meeting vote?
It would, because we're moving money from the general fund, we'd have to
That's
vote
what I
it.
thought.
General fund.
So it would have to be approved by town meeting to do that.
And then it gets-
So we're going to be looking at a tax on an unimproved, unbuildable party that will just be consumed by this other property. And so only the money that's coming from that portion of it is going to be going, those taxes will be going towards, do we even have any idea how much that is? It seems like it's de minimis, you know, it's certainly not gonna move the trust forward.
Yeah, no, she just asked the question. We answered of what would go into the process. So would people feel more comfortable in making a decision if we had an updated appraisal?
Yes.
I'm looking to spend money, but would that help people? I mean, I'm asking all of you, what further information at this point in time do you
None.
need to make a decision? John says none. Is there anybody
Of
else?
course you know.
Yes, I think an updated appraisal would be helpful in understanding how far we are.
Okay, how far we are. Does anyone else feel that way? You said yes.
Well, yeah.
To the move that we use up to $2,500 from the select board housing account for an updated appraisal on 20 Glenwood Ave.
Second.
Roll call vote. Michelle?
Yes.
John?
No.
Yes.
Thea? Mike?
Yep.
I vote no. All right, so that passes. So we're gonna use $2,500 to have an updated, up to $2,500 to have an updated appraisal performed by Mark Reens, is it Mark Reenstar?
Yeah.
Is that,
Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah. okay. So does that mean we should table everything else tonight? What do people think?
Yeah, until we have the appraisal, right? The updated appraisal, we can't really do much.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a clarifying question for that? Was it out of the select board housing fund you're using, just for?
Yep.
Okay.
It
I don't
was
know
out
if
of the
that was out
comptroller slush fund, I think is what
Yes.
we.
Yeah, housing slush fund. Just so I know, if that's what you said in your
Yeah.
motion? Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll wait to get that. And so what, and we'll just leave the PNS as it is right now? Can we?
Is there a
Liz,
deadline in there?
Is
I
there a
didn't do the
deadline to
PNS.
respond? I don't,
We had
Hold on.
October 26th.
well, no, that's the date we were supposed to close by.
Close.
But I don't think was there ever a deadline to get the PNS done by? You know, typically in an offer, in a real estate transaction, you have a deadline to get the PNS signed by. Was there ever? I didn't see one in this process. I could be wrong.
Do you have the notice of award?
That's what I was, yes, I do. Hold on.
Probably already passed. The award's rescinded.
I think the,
Now we're into this.
the RFP put it.
Sorry, there's emails titled notice of award that aren't notice of award, so I'm
Take your
having a hard time
Liz. We
finding it.
appreciate your assistance this evening. Took a bad law school exam question.
It really is.
Okay, I found it. We did. Okay, but it says if you fail to execute said purchase and
Which we
sale
are.
agreement within 45 days,
No, you being
Yeah.
the property.
not us.
Or the bidder.
That was us.
The town will be entitled to consider all your rights arising out of the town's acceptance of your proposal be abandoned. So that wouldn't apply because it would be because of us. So contingent upon execution of a mutually acceptable P&S within the town, with the town within 45 days of this notice of award,
And what was the date of the notice of award?
September 19th.
So we're looking at November 4th, roughly?
But that obligation within 45 days, that is not on, that's not our obligation, right?
No,
Is it mutual?
It's mutual, it seems
That's,
like.
that part
Seems
is
mutual.
mutual. So,
all right, well, why don't we talk to Mark Greenstone? We have a meeting on October 30th. Why don't we see how fast he can turn around an updated appraisal? And if we need to extend that time out, does anyone oppose management reaching out, seeing if they're willing to give us another 30 days?
I don't
Sounds
oppose that.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So, is there a motion that somebody could make to that extent?
Do we need to make it before we know we need it?
Okay, that's true. Why don't we come back on the 30th? We can talk about it then. Is that enough instruction, Beth?
I think so.
I'm happy to talk to Mark as well.
You just have to listen to the last 2 minutes, Beth, it's all good.
Okay. Moving on. OPEB pension actuarial, well, I know it's a tough act to follow, but you guys can do your best talking about OPEB.
Like the oil company.
What is he staying for this?
I mean, I have to stay for,
Oh.
do you need a room?
No, 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 it's fine.
I have to stay for something else.
Yeah, it's not OPEC, it's OPEB.
Oh, yeah, OPEC.
OPEC.
That was Jim Johnson's favorite thing to say. The oil business.
Right.
Well, that would make sense.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
This is really just OPEB, it's not pension, by the way.
I'll talk pension if you want, but.
Oh, no.
Thank you, everyone. This is Parker Elmore. He's our actuarial for the OPEB liability, which we all know and love.
Doesn't get any more fun than OPEB on a Monday night.
After a discussion about
Oh, you think
Glenwood.
I think it gets, P&S is way more fun.
No, nothing's better than OPEB.
You're an actuary, not an appraiser, right?
Wait, do you do appraisals?
But no, we're part of that deal.
My dad's an
Anyway.
actuary.
So OPEB, fun and exciting things that OPEB is. So we've been doing this stuff for you guys for a while. It's generally the first or second largest liability on your balance sheet, so it is a rather large number. The quick 30-second overview about our firm, we've been since '98 when we were founded. We have an office in Connecticut and Las Vegas. We're in 37 states, 8 countries. I was on the West Coast yesterday. I'll be in the UK next week for a fishery client, so I get around on planes. Anyway, fun stuff. So,
Fish have insurance?
fisheries. Fisheries management.
Oh, okay.
So you need fish in the UK. He does them. So anyway, so gotta have fish and chips.
He does that clubs too.
You gotta have fish and chips and mushy peas. Anyway,
Guess
So-
go on tour.
total OPEB liability. That's the big liability. We used to call this actuarial liability before GASB decided that was too confusing. So it was $130 million a year ago. Now it's $140 million. You know, part of that is the interest rates went down slightly. Things go up. And the reality is your liabilities are going to go up every year despite the fact that $1 a year from now is worth less than $1 today. So that's why things go up. Your fiduciary net position, again, what most people would call assets. GASB thought people didn't know what assets were. Fiduciary net position we have. Went from 4.9 million to 5.8 million. You had a decent year in the market. You know, that part is good. Net liability, unfunded liability, according to most people, went up by about $9 million. Again, overall, I'm delivering good news. I know it doesn't look like it when you go $9 million. That's not good news. But the reality is things end up
Fuzzy
about
math.
$6.2 million better than we expected. So we expected it to be 6.2 million worse than it is. Things are actually pretty good.
Which to be 6, the overall?
The overall.
Okay, so 134 to 140 or 140 to
Yeah.
146?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So we expected things about 6.2 worse. Woo. So there's a lot of numbers on this page. We'll focus on a couple of ones that are important. The service cost. That's the value of benefits being earned during the year by active employees. It's a big number, $3.8 million. It's about $4,200 an employee. So I always tell people, think about it this way. If Johnny or Mary or anybody else worked for you guys making, I don't know, $50,000 a year, they're getting $4,200 a year in what I call deferred comp, payable as a medical benefit in retirement. So that's really what that means. So when you say, oh, it cost me $50,000 to hire somebody, not really. More like 54.2, because you got this deferred obligation. Financial statement expense, we're not doing P&L here. P&S maybe, P&L no. So, I know, too soon?
Yeah, P&S what? Wait, what?
Oh, I didn't even catch that. I was like,
Anyway, so we'll leave that alone. Nobody's getting bonuses on earnings per share or anything like that, so we're not, as far as I know anyway. The employer share of cost is really the cost the town paid for retiree benefits, not your total medical, but it's really your retiree share. There's this thing called implicit cost. I'm happy to talk about it all you want, but it just deals with the fact about your non-Medicare retirees are getting subsidized by your active employees, and that subsidy needs to be reflected. You put $350,000 into the trust. The net OPEB expense, again, an interesting number. Nobody's really using it. The discount rate, the interest rate we use to value this 100-year stream of benefit payments back to today, went from 5.2 to 5.11. GASB has a weird way of calculating interest rates. Long story short, it's kind of like as you stay in a pension plan. So it went down slightly. I will tell you next year it'll probably go up by about 50 basis points or 0.5%, just in the way they do their calculations. So next year your numbers are going to look about $10 million better if nothing else happens, just because they're changing interest rates. So that is what it is. So the all important, what happened? Well, premiums went up by less than expected. I saved you $15.3 million. Now that's, here's the thing, we're gonna have a lot of assumptions here we'll talk about in a second. Assumptions, how do I say this, aren't real. And what I mean by that is, I can assume everybody dies at 65. Oh my God, your liabilities go to nothing. Doesn't mean it's really gonna happen. Or I can assume everybody goes to be 130. Oh my God, your liabilities went sky high. Doesn't mean it's gonna happen. So we can make all kinds of assumption changes, make your liabilities whatever we want. That's not real. Things like premiums, that's real cash out the door cost. That's real. Higher turnover than expected. Some retirees, I like to say stop taking coverage, sounds much more gentle that way. Some people terminated employment earlier than expected. Now your discount rate went up by more than it went down, which increased liabilities by $1.5 million. Benefit payments didn't change by a dime. It's just interest rates went down. Now we updated our trend, we expect future healthcare costs to be. We've increased what our future expectations are. Part of that is everyone's had a couple good years with COVID. I know it sounds odd to say, oh, COVID came and healthcare costs went down. That's reality. Now, if you believe that doctors and hospitals and nurses are going to take less money over time, when inflation was at 8.7 last year and they were getting 4%, when they traditionally get above inflation, we have a catch-up factor that has to happen here. So these doctors and lawyers are going to get paid, as you saw. If you're watching Kaiser Permanente out in California, you're watching Walgreens people walking out, CVS people walking out, Rite Aid's in bankruptcy now. Healthcare costs are going to go up, at least that's our forecast. So in this magic pot of assumptions that we have the discount rate we spoke about. We take all these future stream of payments, bring them back today at a certain interest rate. Higher discount rate equals lower liabilities and vice versa. But then, we assume, okay, so you hired somebody today. What's the probability they'll still hold next year, the year after, the year after? Okay, they make it all to retirement age. What's the probability they retire at 60, 55, 65, 56? Okay, now they like to retire. What's the probability they like to take benefits? Probably they like to cover a spouse. And then healthcare cost inflation, because of our actuaries, we make it incredibly complicated with this long thing about GDP growth and constraints and all kinds of nonsense. Works out to be about 4.5% a year on average if you want to talk about it in human math. Your healthcare costs, you have a medical, you have a life insurance benefit, doesn't really matter. Don't get me wrong, 4,000 is better than nothing, marginally. Your health insurance is about $934 per person per month. A little higher than the average we see across the state. However, if we geographically adjust it from where you're located, it's about right. You're in the Boston metro area, you pay higher costs. Your Medicare costs, again, slightly above the average, maybe 5% above the average. Again, geographically, not a big surprise. The all important, how do I compare to everybody else? Well, you guys are about 4.5% funded. As you can tell, nobody's very well funded. 72% of people are under 10, so you have plenty of company. You guys are about 50th percentile. About half people are better than you, half people are worse than you. Now you've got some people that are fully funded.
I like the buffer,
nice.
nice
As my
buffer
sev-
around
As my
us.
seventh grader would say, we're mid.
Right there.
Sure you heard that, Beth, right?
I'm gonna stand out, just sit right in the middle,
Yeah.
nobody notices you.
We're the gray man, right?
Exactly. So, here's some, peers, and we go by geography and size and a bunch of other things. We have,
And W's apparently.
W's are always good, whatever we can come up with. But again, you look at the all-important math, you guys, service cost per participant is about $42.88. Our statewide average is $41.95. So you're worried about the average. I mean, certain people like Malden or higher, they have a lower discount rate.
Can I ask you a question? Does
Yeah.
that include the Medicare Part B reimbursements that we pay?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
that's probably why we're higher.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have a more generous plan than most. I don't think that's really used anyone. Your funded ratio of 4.15. You're below the average, but again, there's a difference between, go back to, your middle school math, median and mean. You're at about the 50th percentile, but the average is higher because we've got a couple people like a Wayland, a Needham, a Lancaster, some other ones that are very well funded. And so they drive up the average. Doesn't change the mean, we got a whole lot of zeros in there. So the mean is a whole lot lower, the median. Service cost by function, all it really tells you is, guess what? Police and fire have the highest because they work the shortest career. They leave earlier, which therefore means they get the benefits over a longer period of time, and they accrue it over a shorter period of time. So not a real surprise. And then the drum roll, please, about what's going to happen in the future, of which I can assure you we are wrong. I do not know exactly when everyone's going to die. But with that said, what you're going to see is, you look at these numbers, you go from $140 million to $582 million over 40 years, and your first thought is, why even try? And so, hence why we have these present value numbers on the right-hand side, because that would be your natural inclination. In today's dollars, a percentage of today's budget, you're at $140 million today, 40 years from now, you're at $184 million. So you're going up by about 30%. It's not nothing, but it's a manageable thing if you want to take modest changes. You can make modest adjustments and you can address the issue. Your cash out the door costs go from 4.4 to 7.1. That's a bigger number. And part of the reason why you guys are setting aside funding now is to provide some protection against the volatility on cash flow, because these things are going to happen. But the thing I tell folks is, listen, your liabilities are going to go up by 30% over 40 years. You can be like Congress and Social Security and put your head in the sand and say, oh, I never saw this coming. And then in 2032, we're going to go, oh, we're going broke. Who knew? Now we have to do something. But they were notified back in 95. They've had a little bit of time. So you could do things like Congress does, or you can make modest changes throughout time, and then problem is solved. So you can wait for disaster, or you can make incremental small changes, maybe a Medicare Advantage plan, maybe a Medicare buy-in for people who aren't eligible.
Check, check, what else?
There's a lot of things you can do. Listen, the hardest part of this is the stuff that nobody wants to do. It's the plans.
Yeah.
The prescription, Medicare population, 65 plus, is about 80% of the liability. That's where the money is. That's also the hardest place to cut. I mean, let's just be honest about it. And so you're going to deal with prescription drugs. You're going to deal with, availability of, services. You're going to deal with co-pays and contributions. That's where the money is. That's also, there's no votes in cutting. I understand all that. I don't have to get elected to anything, so I can say all these things. So, but that's the reality of the situation. And that's pretty much what I got.
One comment,
Yeah.
if you want to go back there,
Yeah.
it shows that you've infused the 5.5 or
Yep.
5.2
Yeah,
extra
starting
million in
about-
there.
Yeah, in about 2030.
Yeah, well, actually, it's gonna be sooner than
Yeah, I
that,
know.
but not that amount. So we've developed sort of a policy that's
Yeah.
been informally kicked around for probably how many years, Michelle? Just to maybe make that more of a formal,
Yeah.
less of a suggestion and more of a policy.
Yeah.
And it might not be 5.5, it might be 4.5, just
Yeah.
because of our pension situation at the
Yeah.
moment, but.
So that's a good segue.
Yeah, that sort of gets us to the next,
OPEB funding policy.
yes.
So let me ask about this funding policy. Has FinCom weighed in on this?
Not this year.
Not this year.
No, they've proposed this policy, this idea years ago to the select board, as did the retiree insurance committee and I think even the OPEB committee that was formed maybe years ago. I don't know if that did that. Were you on that one?
No, I went to the Health Insurance Retiree Committee meeting, though, and we
Yes.
definitely discussed it there, probably
Yes.
20, I don't know, 2015, 17? I don't even know.
Yeah, most of our,
I don't know what year that meeting was.
I would say the huge majority of our clients have this policy for a very simple reason. Is it's free and it makes your financials look better. Because what you're doing is you're promising to take action in 2027, and for the next 5 years, you've done nothing to not take the action. And in the meantime, I get to assume that's going to happen, which therefore means I get to use a higher discount rate, you get to show a lower number on your financial statement. So this is the original definition of the free lunch. Now, in 2027, if you decide not to move forward with it, then the lunch gets expensive, because now we can go and, well, hey, we said we were gonna do all these things, and they go, oh, that discount rate of 5.25 now becomes 4.75, let's say, because now you said you're not gonna do these things. So there is a certain element of
Intent.
pressure, if you will, that it puts on future select boards, but nothing in that policy binds a future select board to do anything. You know, as I always tell clients all the time when I do these things, I said, select board next year can go, oh, these crazy people in 2023, I don't know what they were doing. And they just undo it. You know, so it doesn't bind anybody, but it does show the rating agencies that we see a problem, we're trying to solve a problem. And the way I explain it to folks is going, we have a pension liability and an OPEB liability. There's really one overall retirement liability. The law mandates we fund retirement right now, that's the law. But once retirement is funded, we go over to the second bucket and start filling up that bucket.
Yeah, and I mean, in reality, I mean, when I was on FinCom till 15, I think, and probably sat in a retiree meeting in that era. So we have been talking about that plan. When we fund pensions, we'll move to OPEB for 8 years at least. And what's different now for me, I mean, sitting in the seat, but also there is a horizon to actually hit that pension funding. Like in 2015, it's like, oh yeah, when we fund the pension, like that'll ever happen, is sort of how I felt. But
And
now we
just
actually
chopped
can
off 2
see.
years. I'm like, wait, this is actually.
But now
like,
it looks
very
like there's a
close.
horizon by which we actually can fund that pension that didn't even feel as likely. It was probably 2032 when I was looking at it,
Yeah.
8 years ago. So yes, it's intent. Yes, you promised to do it, but yes, it's actually a lot more. It's achievable in a horizon that's actually, you can see it. Not that this is the same board to be configured, but it's a horizon that's, a tangible 5 years. And that is what everyone has discussed, so.
So are we looking to vote on adopting this policy tonight?
I mean, if you're comfortable. Like I said,
I would,
FinCom has not
yeah.
reviewed the language, but the concept has
Yeah.
been discussed for a long time.
I just wonder, since there's another one around the Health or Stabilization Fund with their comments, do we want to give them a
Yeah.
chance to comment before
Sure.
we vote it?
100%.
Because I think their comments that came back on the red line aren't substantively different, but I'd rather maybe do it in that sequence.
Okay.
That's fine.
But I am totally in favor of that policy
Is there
as written.
anything in here that the board is concerned about that you would like to see changed before I send it to FinCom?
Not for me.
No? I mean, it seems like this has been informally what we've been working towards. We're just memorializing it.
And we have, there's an assumption in there, you're gonna put 350 in the budget, which that used to be kind of found money would get into OPEB, and whatever was left over would get
And the
into,
town manager never
OPEB.
funded it, and then.
And now
FinCom
it's
went
in
by it.
there?
Now it's in there, yeah.
now it's in there more regularly, we've made some Medicare buy-in changes. We,
Medicare Advantage.
Medicare Advantage, so our OPEB liability is, we were chipping away at our 4%, this accelerates us, but we're still on that same path. And this memorializes the horizon at which pensions are done, that money goes to OPEB.
Great.
So, I'm good with it, I'm a big fan of this one.
Why don't we get FinCom's review of this and then bring it back in
Yeah.
short order, hopefully? Everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
Any questions?
thank you.
Presentation?
Great, thank you very much.
Very informative, thank you.
Hey, thank you, appreciate it.
We'll see you.
Whenever you need
At
us,
some
you know where we're at.
All right, don't go too far, Stacy.
I was gonna say, are we doing that next?
The Employee Healthcare and Health Insurance Stabilization Fund Guidance. So we reviewed this at our last meeting. We sent it to FinCom for their comments. They came back with some comments.
I've got it pulled up, I made it,
Oh, that's
Right.
revised.
This is a revised.
another,
Revised revision.
Revise.
Yeah.
oh,
So, as you mentioned, we sent the document to FinCom to review, and you have a copy of their red line in your packet. Stacy and I kind of met today to kind of go over our thoughts on what they had proposed. So if you look at their changes to bullet 2, I don't think we have any issue with adding upon the recommendation of the town manager. I would like to have a discussion about the deletion of the final sentence, which I think we just put in there so that there's some flexibility. If we have a year where, I don't know, we suddenly have
So why don't we
$15 million we don't know what to do with.
Yeah, so why don't we stop there? Does everyone feel like paragraph 2, if we need to delete that sentence? I mean, I think the goal there is some flexibility. I prefer to have a little flexibility, but thoughts?
Yeah, I think it makes sense to keep that.
I mean, that anticipates a really flush, good year and a place to
A
put
unique
money.
situation.
Yes.
Situation.
So I'm like, yeah, let's leave it back in. It's not going the other direction.
Right.
Right.
It's not pulling from free cash to balance the budget or make this fund whole or get this fund to 10%. It just, so I'm good with leaving it in. Yeah,
And it's consider.
yes.
All right, so is everyone okay leaving that sentence in, paragraph 2?
Yes.
Go ahead, Beth.
Okay,
paragraph
so
2.
on 3 and 5, it's similar kind of comments. So our thought was that this is a select board policy. So that's the way we had originally drafted it, that it's, the select board will, and the FinCom's redrafting was
Town manager.
town manager. So I think that's,
They like the strong town manager model, right? That's their whole philosophy.
but this is your policy, right?
I get it.
Yeah, and the select board, the town manager carries out your policies.
Right.
And makes recommendations based on them.
So I guess who sponsors the articles at town meeting? It would be the select board, typically, right?
You're asking me.
That
I
what
don't
we-
know.
I mean, there's no hard and fast rule, right? That's what it has been.
That's what we've been doing, right?
Yeah.
So wouldn't the select board be making that?
We can make it jointly, I mean, it doesn't have to be
Yeah, I mean, so this,
exclusively us.
when we created the stabilization fund, you guys sponsored the articles to create it, and the conversation was that the board should adopt a set of rules and regulations, kind of, or guidelines
Yeah.
Yes.
Would.
related to it.
And
So, I
then-
mean, to me, this
Yeah.
is a natural extension of that.
Yeah, and then the town
So
manager.
do you
and
want to put
making
in
the
recommending
budget.
transfers to the fund, the town manager and the select board? William, just put both in
Or
there?
you could say the select board will advise the town manager. I think the language here proposed by FinCom just seems to remove the select board from the select board policy, so, which is a
Right,
little
that's
strange.
right.
In that case, it's the
They're
town
sending
manager's
us a
policy,
message.
which is,
Right.
You could do and. Select board and town manager.
That's what I said, yeah.
So, in considering transfers into the fund, the select board and town manager, keep it at that.
People okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, because I'm just picturing, well, the trigger, maybe not the 3 infusion in, but money out in 5. I'm picturing the town manager's budget.
Yep.
Gets prepared in February. The town manager comes to the select board and says, I'm going to recommend we use from this fund. We put an article on the spring town meeting, and that's how we balance the health insurance budget. So like, when we pull the number 5 trigger to pull money out, we want to make sure we leave 2% there. But it's likely the town manager bringing this to the select board to say, I need to dip into this because we have a high healthcare experience. So it is a mutual negotiation, but it probably starts with the town manager
Right.
identifying the need
Right.
and the comptroller.
But it's helpful in crafting the budget to have these boundaries that we're working.
Yes. Yep. I'm just playing out the scenario in my head.
So we'll make
Thanks for
those
sticking with
changes
me.
to 4 and 5, 3 and 5, excuse me, and then that leaves paragraph 4, Beth.
Right, so, the change to the first kind of, I guess it's a sentence, maybe first 2 sentences, it doesn't have any substantial change, so we accepted those, we were fine with that. It was the last sentence that, and I handed out my copy, so I'll let Stacy.
Oh, I don't have
Oh,
that.
yeah,
Next
yeah.
Oh,
So I recommended, instead of the language that FinCom had recommended, we're recommending this language instead, which is, when recommended, use of the fund will be presented to Springtown meeting for approval as a special funding source for health insurance budget proposed by the Finance Committee. So it's basically gonna be identified on the yellow sheet, as part of the budget article at
Yeah,
town
what they
meeting.
were recommending was a little bit confusing. It's a funding source. We're not budgeting money to move to that fund. It's money coming in to help us balance. So I think that language just clears up. It's gonna be a funding source. On the yellow sheet, if anyone's familiar with the yellow sheet, there's a column for special funding sources. Michelle knows all about these. It would be right there next to the health insurance line, and that's sort of what we were trying to get at there.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
Nope.
Everyone okay with that? All right. Any other changes to the policy?
So we're not, no changes. We're not concerned that, recommend to the finance committee that a specified portion of the fund be used. So that, again, the town manager's budget that goes to finance committee shows that
Yep.
in that column. That gets transferred to the yellow sheet. Town meeting votes that. We don't, well, I mean, the finance committee do whatever they want with that budget, right?
Yeah.
They can say, nope, let's not, let's do it some other way. But the recommendation would come from the town manager with select board's blessing. So we wouldn't need an article per se at town meeting then.
Right.
We would just do it on the yellow sheet.
Right.
Okay,
You could do either way, to be fair.
but the yellow sheet would be a lot
The
cleaner.
yellow sheet would be cleaner, it's built into the budget process, it just becomes another funding source to consider.
I suppose if a future finance committee said, we're not going to, then a future select board
Can
could
sponsor the article.
Yeah.
do an article to do so
Yeah.
and put it in that way. Okay, so there's flexibility with this guidance to still sponsor an article.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm good.
Is everyone good if we make those changes to the policies to adopt it tonight? As amended?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there a motion?
Move that we adopt the Employee Healthcare and Health Insurance Stabilization Fund guidelines as amended.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing no, it passes. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you,
Thanks, Stacy.
everyone.
Glad you could be here for the fun.
All right,
Very interesting.
Lynch Solar. So our,
Ooh, the fun keeps on going. Yeah.
see ya.
Thanks, Stacy.
So I think our consultant, Beth, the other Beth, as we effectively refer to her, is joining by Zoom. So we're just gonna get her up and then
Right back.
kind of go from there. Hi, Ken. Hello. How are you?
Doing well.
This is the first time we're trying to Zoom in a consultant. So hopefully it works.
So can you get any suggestions on what we should do with Glenwood? I like my own stuff, you know, it's pretty funny. Oh, boy.
We're on. I did tell her we were ready.
Can she hear us, Beth? Patty, if I talk? Beth, can you hear us? She's talking. Are there speakers, Patty?
So, yes. So what you'll have to do is speaking into your microphone with us, so I know what it is. She's here and her speaker's off.
I think the,
So, hold on a sec.
looks like there's no
She can
sound.
hear us.
We just can't hear it. I think it looks like our audio's off down in the corner there.
Does it connect through webcam, right?
No, our audio has to be on. This is us.
So we can.
Our audio has to be on
Hello.
and unmuted.
No, don't move.
And I'm the host.
She's
So she said
It'll
she
wake her
can
up.
hear us.
Beth, can you talk?
I think she's there. She just can't.
She's talking, but we can't hear her.
Okay.
So that's our outgoing audio, right? Or our hearable audio.
Hey, I thought she came in through the
She came in through,
WinCam, right?
no, she came in through me. So I'm all hooked up.
Is your laptop unmuted, Patty?
Oh, yep, you're right. Okay, now I'm all set. Try again, Beth.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, awesome.
There's one
Good
last-
evening, everyone. I can't see anything, but I can hear you.
Okay, so what I need to do is, oh, there you go.
See you.
We can see you now.
Yeah, and unfortunately.
We don't
I
want you to
have
see us.
Yeah. All right, I have to start the video. You guys have to look at me too.
Yep.
Let me just.
Patty, do you want me to try to screen share?
No,
Oh,
I got it.
Is that one?
but
Tops of
somebody
everyone's
typed this.
heads, right there.
You can see our foreheads now, Beth.
Yes.
I can indeed.
Actually, you can start talking. I'll fix the other one. Let me make you able to screenshot.
Okay, and yeah, if you can screen share, I'll bring up the presentation.
Okay, you should be all set.
Excellent. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. First, let me start by thanking you all for accommodating me. I know this is a little awkward, but unfortunately, after 3 years of avoiding COVID, living under a rock, somehow it managed to find me at the very last minute. So anyway, so let me sort of walk through where we are, if you guys are ready for me to do that. As you know, we went back and forth working with your team and with Select and Zapotec to again look at the then current 90% design. I know we're at 100% design now, and I think Beth has provided some updates as to additional information that the town is looking to get. But the relative difference between Select's estimation of the amount of capacity they can put on the property and Zapotec's is relatively close, and I feel very confident that after the full 100% design documents, construction documents are finalized, that squeaking out some additional capacity, whomever built this project, that would certainly be achievable. I did use Zapotec's data in my analysis, again, because I think optimization of the rooftop and even the carport, given the time frame for this construction, is absolutely reasonable. In terms of project pricing, as I think you know from our last conversation, Select is in at around, from their proposals, at about 1.85, give or take, $1 million to construct both projects. However, none of their pricing included any of the underground work for trenching and for conduits and conductors, and also for conduits up to the roof. That would have to be done by others. They did indicate that they would install the carport foundations in connection with the construction project, where they would do a partial mobilization and then fully mobilize once the construction is done, so that they're not breaking into freshly laid asphalt. Again, their cost is about 1.85 million. Zapotec, again, based on the 90% design drawings, were advised to add 30% to account for that 10% delta in design, and also for some other soft costs and contingencies to ensure that the project could be fully vetted at what might be sort of a high number. It's my understanding, and I defer to Beth to address it directly, but it's my understanding that there is an effort underway working with one of the estimators to look at the 100% design drawings and see if that changes their estimates. In terms of the borrowing assumptions, I thought it was important to sort of lay out what some of those major assumptions that are built into my models. I modeled finance costs of 2.1 million with a cash infusion as construction capital, whether it's from free cash or somewhere else that's not borrowed money. I modeled 2.6 million with a cash infusion of 500,000 as construction capital, and then again the 3.1 million. In addition to that, we took some guidance from Hilltop Strategies to use assumptions for the borrowing rates. So for the short-term borrowing, for the tax-exempt borrowing, for the band for 2 years, we used 5%, and we used 4% for a long-term bond, for tax-exempt long-term bond, for a 13-year borrowing, and 4.5% for an 18-year borrowing. And for taxable borrowing, we used, again, at Hilltop's recommendation, 6% for the 2-year bands, and long-term taxable borrowing at 5% for 13 years, and 5.5% for 18 years. And those are all updated assumptions since the last time we last met. The power purchase rate that Select had offered was a fixed rate, with no annual escalation for either the rooftop or the carport. So it was a flat rate for 20 years. We used a weighted average of their offer rates. Their rooftop rate, as an example, was a little over 10 cents, and their carport rate was about 21 cents. And we did a weighted average based on the annual generation. It's exactly what Select had done as well to come up with an average rate. Their rate, again, as I mentioned, for the power purchase rate did not include any costs associated with any of the underground trenching work, the conduits, the conductors, or the roof conduits. So we included, in working with the town, we included a capital contribution that would be required because it would have to be done by someone else and funded by someone else of $500,000 for those costs. And it's my understanding that all ads for your construction project have been repositioned to be able to get at the various aspects of that additional cost for the solar, including underground work, just the standalone foundations, and then all of the above ground work for the balance of the solar system, the carport and the rooftop installations. The analysis that we did was assuming Block 8 compensation for the SMART program. I think it's my understanding that your consultants, your contractors are part of their scope is to apply for a SMART award to be able to secure that more highly preferred and financially beneficial block award. The system has been designed in a behind-the-meter configuration with compensation and for any exported generation, basically at the utility's supply rate, which is called alternative on-bill credit rate. I want to remind us, and I said this the last time, that the analysis, I think, is conservative. The avoided energy costs are conservative. I anticipate that those avoided energy costs will likely be higher over time, given energy escalation and also just generally how the building is going to be used. I also note that the savings does not include any demand charge savings, which are likely to occur, but cannot be guaranteed or assumed to be realized because of how demand charges are calculated by the utility. So in listening to some of the questions from the last meeting, I sort of reconfigured my presentation to look at, and this is all for tax-exempt debt, but to look at a set of data that looked at 13 years of debt service and 18 years of debt service. For each of those three scenarios, again, $2.1 million of borrowing with $1 million capital contribution, $2.6 million of borrowing with the $500,000 capital contribution, and then $3.1 million of borrowing. Certainly, if updated estimates come in with different values, it's a simple update to the model to look at what the ultimate benefit's going to be. But and all of that in comparison to Select's offered power purchase rate of it's an average of 15.51 cents fixed for 20 years. And as you can see here, except for the PPA, the estimated benefits over the 25 years is exactly the same under any of the debt scenarios. It's less for the power purchase model because there's the smart incentives and any eligible renewable energy credit revenues that would occur after year 20 would go to the benefit of the owner of the asset, which in this case would be Select. If you look at the sort of estimated cost categories, as you can see, debt service is a big driver in the sort of financial obligation, as well as the construction capital, the capital reserve, operations and maintenance, and insurance, which is an updated number. Beth had reached out to Maya to get some additional information on what the insurance liability would be for the town. Those costs are all the same for any of the debt scenarios. And then, of course, there's an additional cost under the power purchase category for the payment for the electricity that's generated to Select. In addition to that, as you can see, under the capital construction in the third-party power purchase model, we included $500,000 to reflect all of the costs associated with the underground work and the conduits up to the roof, since they were not included in Select's costs analysis. So the other piece of information that I added in here, because there was some discussion about, well, what if the roof doesn't last or the project doesn't last beyond 20 years? I included a line item of a 20-year net present value, again, at the same 4% discount rate. As you can see, once you forego 5 years of benefits with no debt, the NPV doesn't look as attractive, yet you're still going to be realizing benefits. But under this set of analysis, as you can see, and I'll show you sort of the annual. Can everybody see this? I don't know if I can make it bigger.
Yeah, we have it.
But as you can see, in terms of where you might have some negative cash flow in the varying years, your analysis improves on an annual basis when you're borrowing more, but your overall benefits are obviously lower. And that, I'm sure, makes perfectly good sense to everybody. But this really gives you a sense of sort of the timing of the benefits and the timing of the cost, and when you're going to realize the economic value over time. And I think goes, to the discussion of not paying the utility bill, and how soon will that occur. In addition to that, under the Select third-party PPA, there are a couple of years where you potentially upside down, where you're paying them more than you're getting in benefits in years 1 and 2, but you then go pretty positive from that point going forward. So there's certainly benefit, $500,000 of which is absorbed with all of that underground work that they're not undertaking, that the town would have to do using its own funds. And then the next 2 slides, before I go to the next 2 slides, they're really simply going to reflect the same set of data, but using taxable debt. And again, I did that because of the difference between the investment tax credit under the town-owned scenarios and the benefits that would bring to the town if you use taxable debt versus tax-exempt debt. But I'm happy to pause, and if anyone has any questions on the numbers, or I can keep going, whichever works best for you folks.
Any questions for Beth on the numbers? No questions, Beth, at this point.
Okay. So again, same set of data, but just using taxable debt. If you go and you look, NPV is a little different as you look at this data because the interest rate is escalating at a higher rate than the tax exempt debt, but the benefits in some of the scenarios are greater. And then you can see the impact it has on annual cash flow. Excuse me. One of the things that I thought would be beneficial is just to talk about a little bit of the sort of financial uncertainties and risks. So in general, regardless of the ownership model, there's always issues of supply chain disruptions and raw material cost increases. That's no different than any other construction project. There's still uncertainty about whether or not the utility interconnection costs and requirements could be insignificant or significant. It's an unknown at this point, certainly something that would get fleshed out as you move down the process on this project. The state solar incentive program through SMART is a declining tariff program, and it's designed to decline, as you know, from block to block. We're currently in block 8. There's a lot of capacity left in block 8 right now, but if we move to block 9 for this type of project, the incentives will drop by 2%, which is a change in the SMART program. And volatile energy costs have a direct impact on the SMART incentive award, because the value of energy is a reduction from the gross SMART award. All roof conduits and underground civil work have to be completed by the town, except for the canopy foundations, if done under a power purchase agreement with Select. And candidly, with any solar developer, most canopy installations are turnkey solutions. Solar owners of solar canopies typically source to a canopy fabricator who does the foundations and all the steel, and then they come in behind with the solar modules, all the wiring, inverters, all the balance of equipment. But that responsibility under either scenario would be the responsibility, at least all of the conduits, and roof conduits and underground civil work would be something that town needs to take on as part of its scope. In terms of town ownership, there is annual operations and maintenance expertise that's needed, whether you subcontract that out or you build it internally. Certainly the better you maintain any of your equipment, the longer the life is on that equipment. You absolutely, as we've discussed in the financial analysis, you need to do capital planning for real-time equipment replacement and inventory. You want to make sure that if an inverter goes, it's not a 6 to 8 month window before you can get it replaced, because it has an immediate impact on the performance of your system. It will stop performing. And then there's decommissioning, the physical act of removing the asset at some point, and disposal. In fact, there was an article in the Globe today about a new industry that needs to be sort of put in place to address decommissioned solar modules that can, have no useful life left on them. And under a third-party scenario, particularly under the power options model, which I think is really important to understand, the power purchase rate is really, at this time, indicative. And it's going to adjust in relation to the above general risks. And quite frankly, through the power options model, Select will require a contractual provision for a price adjustment mechanism. And there's a whole series of exceptions or exclusions that they will include in their contracts that allow them to increase the price up to a maximum rate that you will contractually agree to accept. In addition to that, any property tax liability for real or personal property, as required under law, will be passed through directly into the power purchase rate. I anticipate the assets would be exempt from personal property, but the underlying property, even though it's a tax-exempt property, will become taxable, and they will be taxed on it. And they will pass those costs into the power purchase rate. So while Select, I think, worked to give us indicative pricing on what a third-party owned solution would be and what that rate might look like, probably the biggest cost liability will be in the canopy. And that canopy PPA, as I mentioned to you just as a standalone, was over 21 cents. To the extent there's significant cost increases in steel from their assumptions, or other work that they did not anticipate, or other expenses that have been excluded in the contract, they will seek an adjustment to the power purchase rate. That, again, contractually, you've agreed they could increase up to a certain rate. I don't know that I need to spend a lot of time going over this. This is the same slide that I presented the last time. Again, I always look at sort of as you're considering ownership considerations, there's qualitative benefits and there's and risks and financial benefits and risks. And it's just where those risks lie and how you manage around them. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or dig deeper into any of the information.
Any questions for Beth? Okay. I'm not hearing any questions right now, Beth, but maybe when we start discussing, there might be some questions. So if you could just hang on for a second, that would be great.
Sure.
I'm wondering for the group, if we were to purchase, I'm trying to ask Beth which slide to go back to, which is, we would be doing taxable debt, likely, right?
Well,
Versus
normally you
tax
would
exempt?
do tax exempt
We would
debt.
do tax exempt, okay. So I just wanted to
Right.
maybe that slide up, because the numbers are slightly different, okay. Tax exempt.
Where's the specific difference between the tax exempt and the taxable? Is it just the debt service?
It's the interest rate and the amount that we get back in the federal tax credit.
Correct. So if you borrow using taxable debt, you get a 30% tax credit of the hard installed construction costs. If you use tax exempt debt, there's a haircut you get on that, and it's about 25.5%. So you lose about 4.5% of benefit, and you're really looking at the difference between the borrowing rate and the economic benefit of the incentive through or the direct pay through the Inflation Reduction Act.
Is that in this table?
Yes, the specific amount is not in this table.
Okay.
But I can, depends on the, so assuming a capital cost as an example of, assume a capital cost of $3.1 million, which is what I'm assuming the capital cost is. The tax exempt amount is about $790,000 of a direct pay incentive that you would get after the project is in commercial operation. The taxable amount is about $930,000.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
But we're borrowing at a higher rate for the taxable. That
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So I was just trying to place it on the table.
So if you compare this table to that, I think you folks have this in hard copy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can see the difference between these two tables. They're exactly the same table format, but one is taxable debt, the other is tax exempt.
So Beth, did you do an exhibit that shows, or I know it's not here, the taxable, difference between the tax exempt and the taxable debt, if that's $250,000, the difference in the subsidy of between 30% and 25.5%, and what the delta is? Because that's really the question, right? Do you know
So
what I
in
mean?
terms of what the borrowing is,
Right, so the borrowing costs between, $2.6 million or whatever, between the tax exempt over the life of the loan and the taxable, and what's the additional interest cost on the taxable debt, right? Because that's,
Yeah.
because, right?
Yeah, I mean,
if you're
that's all
paying-
built into her net
I know,
present
but I
value.
look for the difference.
right, so if you look at this, the debt service for tax exempt,
Yeah.
it's 2.576 million.
Yep.
And then if you looked at, we can do the math, it's 2.566 million.
Oh.
So
Nothing.
for this same $2.6 million
Yep.
13-year borrowing.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
it's tens.
$10,000.
Yeah, it's nothing. It's-
Right, the other couple weeks ago, it was like 38,000.
Yeah.
I was doing the math.
Yeah, thank you.
And the reason that changed by the way. The reason it changed is because the interest rates changed. If you recall, the last time we met, I was using 5% ban, 4% bond for the 13 years, but for taxable, we were using 5 and 5, not 6 and 5. So it does make a difference to that. Oops.
Other questions?
And Beth, in your comments, you said that your savings with the ownership on the energy was conservative, and that we would likely have higher savings than what you projected. True?
I would say the savings, this line right here, the avoided cost savings,
Yeah.
I think are ultimately going to be higher.
Okay.
Because values that, and I use the same values that Select and Zapotec use, even though I think they are lower than what I would anticipate they'll be. Well, the building will be more efficient and the equipment will be more efficient. You're going to have more systems operating. So I expect there'll be higher usage during certain times of the year, and I think you'll see some greater benefits. The SMART incentive under the ownership model, to the extent you get block 8 in this year, the SMART incentive should not change.
So Beth, as energy supply gets constrained, other plants come offline, you get smacked with a higher demand charge?
No, the way the demand charge works, it's kind of interesting. It's basically a capacity charge. So
Right.
it's the highest 15-minute period in the month that your building is operating at peak. It's not a utility infrastructure demand, it's a building peak demand. So it's what that physical building is doing, that meter is doing, the highest 15-minute capacity requirement, demand requirement during that 15-minute period in each month.
So I think Michelle brought up a really good point. It's the essence of this decision to me, which is to take the energy expense out of the budget, right? To give it certainty. So if we spend $3.1 million, we know what that energy spend is over the next 25 years. So my point is that, and I think that the demand charge for that 15 minutes goes up as the wind energy offshore gets delayed, and we have more Bitcoin miners just demanding more energy, and so the supply is constrained, so the demand charge is going to go up. So that's an uncertainty, and if we can eliminate that by purchasing it, by purchasing the solar today, my point is your model can't really contemplate, and it shouldn't, the potential very high demand charge that the utility could levy.
So I think there are two things. I think as you know, I do a lot of sort of traditional energy procurement for my clients. So there are two things I think you want to think about. To the extent there's a delay in certain types of renewable assets coming online, there will always be, and that's what the Independent System Operator of New England is there to do, is to make sure that the lights don't go out. Right? And so they will require certain other assets to be online regardless of cost. And what we'll end up seeing is not necessarily demand charge going up, but we're going to see overall costs going up that are socialized across either on a volumetric basis, on a kilowatt hour energy basis, or potentially to the extent there's a capacity constraint, maybe the utilities demand rates will go up. Right? I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting at, yes.
Doing solar, regardless of who owns it, is absolutely a hedge, right, against future energy costs. No question about it, because you're kind of locking in your benefit on the front end, depending on how it's owned. You're taking a whole bunch of energy from the sun and feeding it into your building. So it's definitely a hedge. The question of who owns it, this would be a very, very different discussion about ownership had the Inflation Reduction Act not provided for a direct pay option to tax exempt entities. Because you couldn't rationalize all of those costs in these kinds of models without that direct pay benefit.
Okay.
And now you can.
Other questions? All right. Your question?
Not for Beth,
Okay. So, all
discussion.
right, so let's discuss, where is everyone at with this?
I am unchanged. I think we should own it. And I think the only discussion is, do we borrow 3.1, or do we put some hundreds of thousands of dollars to reduce the overall borrowing? I'm not saying that we have $500,000, but I am in the ownership camp and a 15-year borrowing span. So I'll just start there, which is no surprise to anybody at this table.
Well, I will go to what are our risks, which is no surprise to anybody at this table at that point. But my main concern is kind of on this financial uncertainties and risks slide, is just thinking about the, risks towards the O&M and towards this replacement and inventory, and making sure that we have, things at the right timing should something breaks. So just, trying to weigh how do we address those things, and is that within, are we confident that that's within the operation and maintenance and within the insurance, or are we also adding some level of training or some position within DPW that, we would want to account for as well. But the way, to me, the way these numbers are presented, it seems that, unless Lynch is like so incredibly energy efficient that we're not using any power, that purchasing seems to be, over the course of things, a better long-term outcome.
Beth, how, of your clients, have any had solar in place for 10 years, and what has, and I know the technology has improved multiples over the time, from efficiency, from the rectifiers, all those kinds of things. But if they were advertised the last 15 years, have they lasted 15 years, or are they actually failing after 7? And so then if we get a system that's allegedly gonna last for 25 years, we're like, maybe this is gonna last for 15, and that might affect our decision.
So the modules are warranted for performance, so operational performance at like 85%, and by year 25 to be like 85%. So they really retain their efficiencies over the long term. And systems, solar modules can last well upwards of, again, depending on the, how well the system is maintained. And they could last up to 40 years. Probably one of the oldest solar arrays in the country is in the city of Beverly. It was installed during the Carter administration. So that tells you how old that is.
Wow.
Inverters will need to be replaced.
He's alive, they're alive.
The inverters will need to be replaced every 12 to 15 years. Now, maybe inverter technology will improve and they won't have to be replaced. If you're maintaining them, make sure they're operating at peak performance, making sure that they're not being, gnawed on by critters. There's all kinds of things that a good O&M plan can preserve the life of them. You just plan for that replacement sometime in that period. My analysis, I think we were looking at year 14 or 15 that you would replace the inverters.
And you were mentioning the Block 8, it seems likely that there wouldn't be bumped down at this point to Block 9.
If you applied for SMART before the end of this calendar year, for the SMART program, if your consultants applied for it, you would be considered under the first 2023 value of energy, which is going to be a more advantageous set of data than when we get into 2024. And you would likely make it into Block 8. You get to hold on to that award for 18 months, automatic. It's an automatic sort of reservation period. after which you can apply, by you, it would be whoever, whether it's third-party owned or if the town owns it. There's an application for a fee, which is refunded if you build the project, but there's application to extend it another 6 months, automatic, no questions asked. So you really have 24 months to get the asset built. And then if it is not built, you can apply for what's called a good cause extension, which is up to the discretion of the State Department of Energy Resources.
So that's within applying by the start of the year is within Lynch timing and.
Yeah, so my understanding, Ken may know better, but I believe the consultant has been asked, the EFPBC's consultant has been asked to start the SMART application.
Yeah, they're working on it, I think, right now.
Right, they were waiting for the 100% plans to be developed.
So meeting the end of the year deadline is
Seems
totally reasonable.
Reasonable, yep.
Okay. And getting it built in 2 years, 18 months plus 6 months, 2 years from award, seems like that's the Lynch timeline as well.
It
Like, we
is.
want the school online the fall of '25, whether this is done the summer of '26 or whatever, if it's ready completely, that's still within the time frame that we're thinking about with the school too, sounds like.
What happens if the school project's delayed, construction-wise?
I think that would go into the good cause
Good cause.
extension. I mean, that's not,
Okay.
I think that's something that the state, it would be completely opposite from the state's policies and objectives not to recognize that those kinds of things happen.
Would punish us for that, yeah.
And can the, or Beth, I'm not sure, better to ask, but the schools have prioritized the, some of the construction work, some of the conduit work and underground construction as the, as alternates.
Yeah, so they have 4 alternates they bid the project with. The first alternate, and you have to, when you bid a project, you take the alternates in order. So the first alternate is the bridge railings, or it's the railings at the roof, because of the solar panels. The second alternate, and this has changed since the last time we met, they found some issues with the bid document, so they went back and revised this. So the second alternate is just underground conduit work. The third alternate is the foundations, and the fourth alternate is any of the solar panels. So that's how the project will bid. They'll get three separate prices for those items.
So that could be part of the project, or?
So, I think the idea is if we go direct purchase, this funding, however, whatever the dollar value is that would be approved at town meeting, would buy out those 3 alternates. There's no money in the project,
Yep.
for the solar piece.
So, this is a hard decision. I appreciate what you said, Michelle, and I've kind of gone back and forth on this, but I think where I land, looking at the numbers, is I think I would favor the PPA. And I totally get what you're saying. And like I said, it's been a tough decision. I just don't see the net present value savings great enough to swing me the other direction. And the reason for that is I just, we don't have a crystal ball. I can't predict the future. But, historically in this town, we've struggled maintaining systems. And we're good at installing things, but we have a tough time maintaining things. And I just think the costs will be greater. I'm concerned about, what would happen if we need to replace a roof or if there's a roof issue. I totally appreciate the fact that we, could eliminate energy bills, and it sounds so good to be true. I guess I just would need to see kind of some type of windfall to really sway me in that direction. Because what I've seen in some of these emerging systems that we've installed, is that we've actually run into issues, and, the systems have had to be replaced before, we're done paying for them. So I look at that net present value number, and it just doesn't swing me in that direction where I think a direct purchase and taking on that risk. The other issue is that I think I would be for a little bit more risk, not, I guess, willing to take a risk if, our capital situation wasn't the situation that we face. Because I think this, obviously if we fund it, through borrowing, it's gonna delay some type of project, would be my guess. So that's my take. Maybe, the assumptions become clearer as we go through the process. Maybe we, fund the underground work with like ARPA money, and then, the assumptions become a little bit more clear and we see that windfall. But where I sit right now, there's just a lot of assumptions, and we've kind of gone through these numbers several times, and I just don't feel like, since they've changed over the period of time with different entities involved, I just don't feel that reliability where I sit. But, I mean, if what you say happens, you could be 100% right, then it's a win for the town, and, you've done a great job. I'm just not there to take that risk at this point, where I sit, because, there's an alternative that
So-
accomplishes the same sustainability
Yep,
goals.
and I'm not coming at it from a sustainability goal, no offense, Ken, because it's gonna happen anyway, right? We're gonna have solar panels. I'm coming at it from basically a financial perspective. I think the net present value, Rich, everything's in the red after 20 years at 4%, but at 25 years, ownership's the only models in the black. The net benefit on Solect, when you put the $500,000 that's now, that we thought they might be doing on construction capital, is now on the town, whether we pay it up front or we pay it in our rate. A $56,000 benefit when everything else is in the $700,000, $900,000 range. That pays for a lot of custodians, that pays for a lot of replacement parts, that pays for a lot of, learning as we go. That's a pretty significant number. And in the meeting that we had as a group a couple weeks ago, the town is owning the array on the third floor classroom. We have to maintain the part of, there's 3 arrays, right? There's the carport, there's a roof, and there's the third floor classroom. The carport and the roof are the things we're voting on here. The town is planning on owning a small array on a classroom roof as it is. We're gonna have to figure out how to maintain that as a, in the course of running that school. So understanding how to maintain that, whether we pay the PPA vendor to maintain it or we learn how to maintain it, part of the design of Lynch has us owning a piece of solar as it is. It's a learning curve we're gonna need to get on. And I think there's a lot of avoided costs and savings that will allow us to save for an inverter replacement or potentially train staff or contract out in the first years with the avoided energy costs that we're not making on a monthly basis. So I think there's a way to.
So the numbers you just referred to are the estimated net benefits, right?
Yep.
So, and then you adjust for net present value, right?
Right.
Okay. And then if you do that, it looks like they're all in the red after 20 years.
All in the red after
Yep.
20 years,
And
yes.
25, a year 25, the PPA's in the red, 216,000.
And everything else is, nothing else is 6 figures in the red except for a 20-year bond, right?
Yeah, so if you take the 2.6, like you said, the 500,000, so it's positive 21,000.
Yep.
Right? So we're talking a difference of, 195,000, roughly, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're still paying,
For energy,
so it's
Yes.
that and.
right. So I guess where I sit, that 195,000 savings over even 25 years, it just isn't enough to sway me, to do the direct purchase. I think the alternative risk, the unknown is, I guess, too risky for me. If that was like a 500,000 or $1 million number, might think differently. But I get what you're saying about the energy savings, because, again, it's hard to predict.
Yeah, I would, agree with Michelle. We've been part of the subcommittee here, so we've had a great opportunity to meet with Beth and have questions answered, and we've had a lot of feedback and kicking the tires on a lot of options here. To me, direct purchase is what was recommended by the EFPBC, all the members in the Sustainability Subcommittee, so I think that that should be the target. If we can find a way to pay them outright or a substantial part of it, you know, as John was saying, we're really kind of prepaying our future operating obligations, so that makes sense. And it makes sense at a time when, you know, I always feel like sometimes the budget is in a rough place, sometimes it's in a good place, and we have high operating reserves right now. We have, you know, a large sum of money sitting in ARPA. We have, you know, money that is sitting in the overlay account. I think it's good planning and good strategy for us to kind of pay these things now. And when we look at, you know, even we look at the first couple of years of, you know, Vincent Owen and the panels there, that first year, VO was 15% above projections for, you know, solar output. So I haven't seen for communities that have put these in either with PPA or with direct purchase that the systems have failed or there's any risk. They seem to be, the technology's been around long enough that it seems to be in place and it seems to be working, and people seem to be, you know, either making money off of it or, you know, offsetting costs. So I think that we should try to find a way to make the direct purchase work, and you know, but and I think it can with just a little bit of cash infusion from us, and I do see it as a capital investment, right? So it's a capital project and it's capital investment for the building.
So I had asked Liz the question about the possible use of ARPA funds for the underground work, and I just wanted to kind of, since you have stayed for this long.
So I think that you could use it as part of the overall school building project, because as a government service, you're building a new school, and the underground utility work would be part of that school, and so I think you could use it under that auspice. And
So we could do it for the conduits.
right, prior
not-
to the,
But not the foundations or the
Correct.
solar panels, right?
and before the parking lot goes in, so as part of the building project. Also, if there's any stormwater associated with that, or, you know, stormwater improvements could also be covered by ARPA.
Other thoughts?
I won't question why underground conduits are good and foundations bad. I'm just gonna believe you, Liz.
So the foundation would be for this, for the solar, and when you look through the final rule, solar
Not,
is not covered.
okay. Conduit
Energy
for
efficiency,
structure.
yes, schools, yes, government services, yes, but the solar structures themselves are not included.
Okay,
So of those three alternates that I listed,
number 2.
alternate two, right?
How about engineering associated with solar construction on a school project?
Engineering associated with the school project, yes. Engineering associated with the solar project, no.
Bait and switch, Ken.
But we could use free
Three
cash
words.
though, right? We could use any other, you know, funding source.
Yeah.
That's not otherwise restricted.
So what do people want to do?
Well, so would we have both as.
So we
as
need to,
motions, right?
yeah, we have two
So we're voting
motions.
which one we're,
Endorsing, I guess.
So I guess,
or-
if I could just go
How's
to
this
the article motion sheet for a second. So,
Okay.
there's two articles. The first article is for direct purchase. The second article is for the, to allow the board to enter an agreement for longer than 30 years. So it's really the only approval that town meeting would be giving. They're not approving the PPA itself. If you did want to go with the direct purchase option, I think the question is whether you want to leave the alternative for PPA should the direct purchase option fail, because obviously you want to eventually get to a net zero building, so these are the two ways to get there.
Yeah, it
So-
seems like you keep the latter in case the former fails.
Right. So if we decide to go direct purchase, what we provided were two drafts for the motion, one that is a full borrowing and one that is a borrowing plus some use of free cash.
So do we need to vote the motion language tonight? Because I'm just thinking the source of,
We do.
could be free cash, ARPA overlay, right? It need not be free cash.
Correct.
Could
So,
update the motion to be this, or this,
so you,
right?
the motion book has to get mailed out on the 26th.
So I understand we need to sort of come up with a number. I'm just thinking that sometimes our motions say use this, or free cash as a source of funding. But you think in this one, we have to be very specific?
Well, you don't need town meeting approval for ARPA. And I don't know about the overlay funds. If we're gonna pick one of those three, I would recommend free cash if that's the way unless you want to vote ARPA funds, but that doesn't have to go to town meeting. You would just reduce your borrowing authorization.
We couldn't say, or, we couldn't list multiple funding sources.
Well, I guess-
Town meeting doesn't.
We would have to pick
don't
one by the
approve
time
ARPA.
we went, right?
Right.
Yeah, 'cause-
Yeah, that's what I'm
because
trying to
we would
figure
need to
out.
ask them for ARPA, and I don't think we should open it up that we say free cash and ARPA, and then town meeting is
Yeah, no, town meeting doesn't have
proposed that we use ARPA.
any,
No, I was saying the overlay account, ARPA,
yeah,
doesn't
I
make
don't know,
sense.
I don't know enough about the overlay account right now to be able to tell you one way or the other whether you could use overlay funds.
So we need to make
Okay,
a
so,
motion tonight. I guess we need to have a motion, unless you want to come back a different day. We need
Make
to
the
have a
motion.
I'm about to.
All right. I'm empowering you. Not that you needed it.
I was gonna say, thanks for permission. Move that we support, Article 18, and that we appropriate money to pay for the installation and acquisition of solar panels on the Lynch Elementary School using $300,000 in free cash, leaving the borrowing at 2.8 million, if I did that math right.
Can I amend your motion?
Oh, that was quick.
Do it.
Go right ahead.
Because we'll then vote in support of articles later to not
Fine.
specifically say in
Article 18, just move that we
use option
support the
two.
acquisition and installation. Okay.
So you're choosing option two, is that what you're doing for this motion? It's either one or two.
I think so. It's two.
Are you sure?
No,
You don't
because
know.
I'm not looking at what Patty's looking at, but I'm
Option
trusting
two
her.
is borrowing and free cash.
Borrowing, yes, then yes.
Could I ask a quick,
You look concerned, Ken, so I,
no, just a quick question, because I know we're about to get cost evaluators to cost out the purchase based on the 100% design documents, and that could potentially sway the number, even potentially significantly. So it's likely.
Right, but
to-
we
Just
won't
like
have
half
that
an hour here?
number.
but we're not gonna have that number before town meeting, right? It's when the bid opening happens.
So,
No, we would have it.
so this was a discussion we had last week, and we did ask, at Mike's request, we did ask the cost estimator, Meg's, hopefully, we haven't been able to get a response from the first person we reached out to price out the 100% plans for those three alternates. What I will say is that the earliest we would get that number would be for your meeting October 30th, and the motion book has to be mailed on the 26th. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't, if you're not ready to make a decision, we can say that the motion will be distributed under a separate cover, and we have to provide the motion to town meeting 7 days in advance. I'm just concerned about the scope of this issue and that we give town meeting enough notice. So,
Okay, I'll second Michelle's motion. I think I had requested some more updated numbers because we were carrying a 30% contingency on the project, which was when we were at lower, levels of design. It made sense. We wouldn't know where things are going. But now that we're at 100%, that 30% we all felt like in the room was too high. So I think that I don't know what the cost estimators are going to come back with, but I think we were confident that it would be lower, right? And it, as Ken was saying, could be significantly lower. So, so I'm, I'm comfortable moving forward with this motion.
Ken, did you say significantly lower, or did you say just significantly?
Significant. I think you
Right,
just said
significant. I
significant.
didn't hear higher or lower in there. That's my only concern.
It
It's like,
could be significant.
it could be significant, right?
What did you mean?
I
In which
did-
direction did you
I
mean?
did, I
Ken?
did try to say significantly lower, it might have not come out
Oh,
clearly.
yeah, oh,
Right, 'cause the 30%
I think that
was-
last word didn't pop out.
So
Well,
the
we-
only thing I would caution is that when you bid things as alternates, things can go not as you would expect. It's one
Exactly.
thing when it's bid as part of a base bid, but when contractors bid alternates, things can
Fair enough.
be,
So let's play out the happy path, which is not always our experience, but let's play out Ken's happy path, right? The 100% comes in, the cost comes in, and we don't need to borrow as much free cash. That's a motion on the floor of town meeting, that would be, I would think, well received, right? That the
you
all-in
could change
cost,
this motion to reduce
right,
those.
reduce the amount of free cash because the cost is not as high as we thought. So we don't need to use as much free cash, or we're going to borrow less, whatever. So that
I
would
mean,
be a-
ultimately, we won't know until
we won't know at
bids
town
are-
meeting until they're open, but if something is in at the estimating side of things before the night of town meeting, we might adjust
Right.
the
And
borrowing amount. Okay,
The free cash obviously is the free cash, but the borrowing, it's just a borrowing authorization.
Yep.
It's a maximum. The project came in 50% less than we thought it was gonna be. We're obviously not gonna borrow $2.8 million.
Right.
right.
And our practice has been with town meeting, if we notice something, as long as it's, above the number that we're changing to, right? So if we're decreasing the request, then the moderator has in the past, at least since I've been around, said that was in order. There wouldn't need to be, a separate period of notice for town meeting members on the article.
The only thing I would
Option
mention
two.
is that I did check with Stacy, town meeting has to close on November, if, the bid opening is November 17th, assuming that that bid date doesn't change. If for some reason we wanted to try to push this and wait into this vote until after the bid opening, the town meeting has to close on November 20th. So I hope that that's not the direction we would go, because that would
No, I'm not.
be.
I'm not
Okay.
thinking that we should.
Okay.
All right, so there's been a motion by Michelle, it's been seconded by Mike. Patty, do you have the accurate motion recorded?
Let's
Anthea,
see.
did you have a change? Because I think it was to support Article 18, right? Did you have a amendment?
yeah, I just,
There is no number, I don't know where you got our.
It is, yeah, it is.
I was
It's
looking at
in
this
the-
thing.
In the warrant,
Oh,
it's Article
yes.
18, yeah.
So what is the motion?
To support, Article 18, motion to support Article 18, option 2 for Lynch Solar. Do you want, at $300,000 free cash
And the rest to be borrowed.
and the rest to be borrowed.
and I just wanted to make sure our language was reflecting that we're voting on, that this is the motion that we want to bring forward, and not that we're voting it position at this point. Because we,
Fair enough.
This is the motion we're bringing forward, but not necessarily we haven't voted any positions on any articles.
Correct.
At this point. Okay,
Good clarification.
and Mike, you second that?
Yep.
Okay, so roll call vote, John,
Yes.
Anthea,
yes,
Michelle,
Yes.
Mike?
Yep.
And I vote no. All right, so do we want to put the PPA on one, do we have a motion for PPA just in case, or?
Yeah, so the motion is unchanged. There's no dollar value or anything in the PPA motion.
Okay, so does someone want to make a motion to support the motion in Article 19?
Can I just ask a really quick question before you do that? Sorry, Beth, you might also want to include some language about a lease unless town meeting does not need to authorize.
So the
The
lease
lease
would be
under-
approved by the school committee. And the
Oh.
only thing that town meeting is, and Liz, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think this is the guidance we got from Lisa, was that the only reason town meeting needs to approve the PPA is because it's for longer than 3 years. They're actually just approving the term for 30 years.
It's required by the statute too, so.
So do we want to put a motion on for this article? We want to leave the article on, so is there a motion to put this article? Is there a motion for this article to approve?
so move that we approve our, the article for,
Motion.
the motion for the power purchase agreement also, in the event it's necessary,
As currently drafted.
as currently drafted.
Is there a second? Go a second?
Should I second this again?
So
Yeah,
we're gonna-
second, I'll
are we
second
gonna
this.
have a back-
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, sorry, I'm not paying attention. So, obviously, I made it clear that I support the, direct purchase, but in the alternative, we gotta end up with something, right? So, I second the motion. So, right, that's what we need to be doing?
Yes,
Thank you.
that's what we're doing.
All right, so that's been seconded.
Michelle, yes.
Roll call vote.
Yes.
Michelle,
To keep this on the warrant, yes.
John,
Yes.
Anthea,
Yes.
Mike,
Uh-huh.
I vote yes as well. All right, so that takes care of Lynch Solar at this point, right?
Are we all done with that?
All right,
Yep.
Thank you, Beth.
thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Beth.
Okay.
Thanks, Beth.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you,
Beth.
Patty,
Feel better.
for figuring out the technology to beam Beth into us.
Thank you.
We're under an hour.
First for
That's
this
great,
coming.
that's great that that works. Liz is wondering why she's here in person.
Thank you, Liz. I think you're done for
Thank
the
you.
evening.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you for sitting here. It's 10:30. I know you have a long drive home. Be safe.
Glad you were here. Thank you.
No, it was,
You may not be, but I am
I
grateful that you
understand
were
the
here.
in-person benefit of this meeting in particular.
All right, so fall town meeting, Beth, if I understand correctly, we need to approve the warrant as printed in our packet, and I think there was a third update today. And then we need to assign articles to the select board. That's it, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So does anyone have any changes or questions on the warrant that was updated, I think as late as today? I think there was a version 3.
So Article 18 and 19 are the, related to
The
Lynch
ones we
Solar.
just did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
The one thing I wanted to point out, Article 32, due to a recent resignation on the Personnel Board, we no longer have a quorum. They have 3 people and they have a 7-member committee, so we, in essence, do not have a Personnel Board at the moment. So the way this is drafted is currently it's co-sponsored between the Town Manager and Personnel Board. Hopefully, between now and town meeting, we'll have, if anybody still watching at this late hour, a volunteer to move forward on the Personnel Board.
If you're watching at this late hour, you have what it takes.
Yes, to be in the Personnel Board.
Personnel Board, I've never been
I
to a
was-
personnel meeting that went past like 8:30. so-
Yeah, actually, I was previously on the personnel board, and
Hold on.
they are very, very timely. Just to clarify, looking at this, the third version had this in duplicate. So the third version is 20 pages long.
That was the version that went out Friday. That's why we sent the revised version today. This is the version that, that Patty sent today that will go to the printer tomorrow.
Okay, the version I opened from warrant version 3 is 20 pages long and has, as the first set of pages, the old one. And then the town manager personnel
Patty, I
board
didn't
is on
open
page
the one that you opened today, but this is the one that Jen gave me.
Because I just printed it out.
So what I have is, this is 20 pages in, the second half.
What were the changes between the second and third version, just so I
It
can-
was that issue that the version that Patty sent out Friday had like a second half.
So this version that I opened today is 20 pages, and then that edit to the personnel board is on the second half of it.
So the warrant that we're approving is 9 pages long, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So she doubled it.
No,
Now I
that's
for-
what went out Friday, and that's what I said today. And then she gave you I thought she gave you the one that was for the printer to send out to everybody.
I printed the version and it twice, so
Well,
I see what you're
does
saying.
everybody want a copy of the one I have right here? This is the one that we should be voting on.
So it's only the first 9 pages, right?
Yeah.
I think it's is it the second 9?
Patty, I don't know what
Okay. let me-
version you have, but the one that Jen gave me.
All right, we'll come back to that in a
Correct.
second. I just left.
Do you want me to make a copy of this for everybody?
Let's go to assignments for town meeting. Well, you guys figure out that warrant.
So do we know how many are gonna be on the consent agenda? Because I was just doing some straight math, like 35 divided by 5 is 7.
No, there's 35 total warrant
Right,
articles. We're
some of
only
which we
assigning the
consent.
select board ones.
Oh, only ours,
Yeah.
okay.
I'll do 6, 7, and 8, because 2 is a capital planning, and the other one I did last year.
6, 7, and 8.
Okay.
Mr. Fallon.
Can I barter for 6?
Arm wrestle.
I mean, you could,
I gotta
but,
lose that.
but it's just that we had those discussions at capital planning, that's why I thought it made sense.
Yeah, I walk past Leonard Field every day.
I'll give you appropriate credit. Yes, and Mike can take 18, 19, and 20.
I know, right? I know how it works.
So I've got 1. John, you're taking?
Go ahead.
Anthea's gonna take 6. John, you're gonna take 7 and 8.
Yes.
Authorization to lease land. Is this?
That's the, I think that's the,
955 Main.
955 Main Street. Does anyone want 955 Main Street?
Sure.
I mean, I'll try to come up to speed if you want.
John?
John, good.
Sure.
We don't need to do 11.
Okay.
17, appropriate money for Davidson Park and Washington Street Park.
I'll do that if we need to.
Mike?
I'll take 18.
Michelle?
Yes.
I can take 19 as well if we need it, but
Michelle?
Yes.
I can take 20 again.
Anthea? I don't think we need anything on 21.
Nope.
22?
I'll take it if no one else wants it.
Michelle?
Do we need to do
We don't
anything
need
for
anybody on
23?
23?
Mike and I can take 33.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, CPA.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Where's,
There's what?
Waterfield?
yeah,
Thank you.
I took 18, 19, and what? Bless you.
Oh,
me
it's
think of-
11?
that says here, Capital Planning Committee report. On here. So, 11?
Yeah, I remember that, didn't Heather had talked about moving capital planning committee report, bumping it farther back, but in this warrant,
I haven't, yeah, it
It's
says
11.
authorization to purchase land is what that is.
What, 11?
it's
11, yes.
11. So 10 is lease, 11 is
So 11 is
Waterfield.
Waterfield? I'll take that. Pat, you want me to run through these?
Yes, please.
So I've got 1. Anthea's got 6. John has 7. John has 8.
So, just go back to 6 for a minute. I'm not sure if the intention is for capital planning to be, presenting that article.
Okay.
We can,
Can we?
Well, if they need select board assistance, then Anthea can,
Yeah, I mean, I think
are they joint?
they're
Yeah.
joint.
so,
So how does that work? Because I think, I just want to, you said I walk past Leonard Field every day, right? I walk past Leonard Field every day. I ran past Leonard on Saturday, and the street sign that blocks off the hole in the fence that prevents kids from falling like 6 feet was down. So I just want to make sure that we're actually making sure we're compelling in the need that we have to
So
We did
to the
these
extent that we need somebody for 6, Anthea will be the point person for that. To the extent we need someone for 7, John Fallon will be the point person for that. To the extent we need for 8, that's us. John, you're the person for that.
Yes.
John is also number 10. I'm gonna be 11, which is Waterfield, I'm told. I don't have the warrant open in front of me. We've got 17 is Mike. 18 is Michelle. 19 is Michelle. 20 is Anthea. Do we need someone for 21, Beth?
Not sure if that will be consent or not.
I would think
but
that would be
it's
consent.
worth signing somebody just in case.
I'll take it. 22 is Michelle. 23, do we need to assign someone?
That is usually consent.
Okay, well, we'll leave it at consent right now, and see if it changes, we can put somebody on it. And then the last one is 33, and that's Mike and Anthea. That's it, right? We don't need one for 35?
No.
Okay. Any questions about that? All right, so where are we with the warrant?
So I passed out the final version
Oh,
that will
did
be
you?
for printing.
Just now?
That gives
Oh.
you.
Okay, so any questions on this document? Any changes?
Does there need to be? Okay, it's 4 to hear the report of the capital planning committee. That was the one that showed up as 11.
Yeah. Any changes? Everyone good with the warrant as drafted?
So I guess on Article 17, so miscellaneous non-recurring in this year for Davison and Washington, so that's, we don't have to articulate the money, we're just directing it
So
to
we
that
got, for
cause.
the license agreements that we
Right.
did, we got a check for $250,000.
And that's where we want to
To,
put
it goes in, anything that comes in
This is
that didn't
general
have a
fund.
home goes into the
miscellaneous
miscellaneous.
non-recurring. And this we want to specifically earmark for that.
And we'll put
improvement.
it in a, Stacy will move it to a fund that we can only take out for that purpose.
He loves creating those.
She does.
I think that was it. The other question I had was for EFPBC, so that's not us, Article 12.
Are we all set with this? Is there a motion?
Move that we approve the warrant for fall town meeting, subject to clerical edits or edits from staff and town council.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Okay. Next up, Washington Swanton Street. So there's a need to extend the land disposition agreement and due diligence period. We've been working with the Melanson Group and continuing to develop this parcel of land. They just need a little bit more time for due diligence, so we're looking to extend this out past the holidays and town meeting at this point to January 17th. Does anyone have any questions or discussion on this? Everyone okay with extending it out?
I am.
Sounds good.
All right, is there a motion?
Move that we approve the extension to, thank you. Move that we approve the Fifth Amendment to the right of entry and license agreement to January 17th, 2024. And that we approve the Fifth Amendment to the land disposition agreement to adjust to January 17th, 2024. And I think we signed this one.
Expiration date. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, it passes. All right, Next up, TTAC discussion. I know the hour is growing late. We did receive a letter from TTAC in August. It looks like that the committee has resigned en masse. And, I think there's been conversations that have been happening. They were trying to find their identity and what their role is. And, I think, they didn't know what their lane was at this point in time. So we, prompted this letter to be sent to us. We have been slammed with issues and agenda items for the last couple of meetings. It's almost 11 o'clock and we're still here. So it's no disrespect to these individuals. They've done great work for the town. We appreciate their service. I just don't know where we go from here with this. Certainly we can accept their resignation, suspend the actions of TTAC, and then kind of figure out, with hopefully maybe staff's input. We now have a new engineer, we have new DPW director, what they think would be useful. Certainly the select board can weigh on it. There's obviously new members that didn't create TTAC on this board now that they think would be helpful. I just think it sounds like the public that interacted with TTAC, would bring concerns to them, and it would kind of just, they would write a report to us, or, kind of be a clearinghouse for those concerns, and then it kind of didn't go anywhere else. So I just don't know where or what you guys want to do with this at this point in time. But, they've asked to resign, they've asked to suspend TTAC, they've suspended TPAC's meetings. What do you people think?
So at this time, being the operative word, I think we take it up later. I think we go through the opportunities, the concerns, and decide as a group if they reconvene with a charter that we work with them on versus a work plan that they never got around to. If we decide to reconvene, we have some clear goals with some timelines. And I think, what's the span of control and who defines that? But I don't have great ideas toward those two thoughts right now. I just think that's what we take up maybe on the 30th, maybe after town meeting. But we have to accept their suspension of meetings. There's no chair, there's no one to show up.
Yeah. So I can tell you we cannot do it on October 30th.
Right, I was gonna say.
Then after town meeting it is.
Unless you bring a sleeping bag.
Nope,
Thanks.
boy, that's frightening.
We are chock full on the 30th as we speak right now.
Okay.
And then town meeting, so it'd have to come at a later date.
So I think, to Michelle's point, we probably need to have some engagement with the TTAC members and the chair and see, there's, a lot that can be improved here if we feel like it's, necessary to maintain the committee, which I think it's extremely valuable and has been really helpful for us. So, it may not be well served to kind of jam it in here before town meeting, but I think to move a conversation forward, it would probably make sense. So, because it's been stagnant for a while. We heard from the survey from the master plan process that traffic and road safety was the #1 priority of residents. So, having a committee that advises us and works with us for solutions that are multimodal, like TTAC, I think is beneficial.
Yeah, I think just to add to what Michelle said as well is, as we look at this, also having a sense of what, and I think as clarified in this letter, what authority TTAC has and what influence they can have, because, they have laid out a number of accomplishments here and things that have taken place, but also that there's just not necessarily, clear sort of mission or authority at this point to accomplish a broader set of goals.
Everyone okay with that? I don't think we necessarily need to vote on anything.
I would just, suggest that we have an opportunity to bring TTAC to the table to talk through and figure out what is the best.
Those who wish to show up.
Oh, you
We can extend that invitation at a future meeting. All right, so we will do that. Consent agenda?
I don't know if we have much update on the CPA?
Is there any update on the CPA?
Well, Dia and I are both on two committees, and so I think the committees have been meeting and working, and we'll kind of start putting some pressure on some of the content production soon, so based on that soon as well, right?
Yes, not that anyone's listening, but a call for photographs would be photographs of the town.
Yeah.
I think it's one area that would be nice to have some community engagement in.
So otherwise, they're gonna be all dark, because it's gonna be the two of us running around town the night before
What do you
town
want
meeting.
pictures of? Like
Uh,
a town
If you
hall?
look up the pictures that are, around at home, talk to different museums, those are all town pictures.
Yeah,
I mean, you want like
Maybe
a town
Beth, you can put
forest?
something in your
like a-
update, a call for pictures or something?
Sure, we can put it on the website.
Yeah, I mean, even like if we have a nice overhead shot of the fells with the leaf colors right now, I'm like a, drone
we
shot of
Just
that.
go steal from the residence page
Yeah,
with
our-
permission.
DPW has a drone, if there are specific things you want pictures of there. Had them take pictures of lots of traffic photos for me.
It's way beyond my skill set.
I just can't even look over it, Johnny.
Think of what it was like on FinCom.
Yes, I know, I can't imagine.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, now for the consent agenda.
Move that we approve the consent agenda as posted for Monday, October 16th, 2023.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Move that we approve the supplemental consent agenda for Monday, October 16th, 2023.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, WinCam. Have a good night. Thanks, everyone.